It is 7 o'clock, and I'm going to call this meeting of the Concord Finance Committee to order. We have a quorum, and so we're going to proceed. I do have some feedback that I've received regarding our Zoom meetings, and I do want to address that. We conduct them on Zoom. We do all voting via a roll call model. So if we have to vote on anything, we do it in a roll call form. But the thing I want to address this evening is the way in which this is done is we're conducting it using the Zoom webinar model. Now, a webinar means that there are two classes of participants. One is known as a panelist, and the other participant type is an attendee. If you are an attendee, you can see the members of the FinCom and a few other participants in the meeting. The superintendent is here, the Zoom administrator, our note taker, Anita Techley is here, but you do not see any faces or boxes for other attendees. One of the reasons that the Finance Committee is conducting these this way is because we have a very large committee of 15 members, and trying to get a grid of people's faces who are members organized. It's not something that Zoom allows you to do. You can't move the boxes around and say, I want to see these 15 together. So if we have a fair number of attendees from the public, they get jumbled in, and it becomes a little bit more complicated to just call the roll or do other hand raising and getting people's attention. So we conduct this where the Finance Committee members and other attendees of the who are invited to speak or otherwise present are part of it. And if you are a member of the public, you may, when it comes time to request public input, you may use the raise hand feature. We will notice that you are doing that and that you want to be recognized, and then you can be brought into the meeting to speak, identify yourself, identify where you live, and it'll be just like a regular meeting. But unfortunately, attendees who are not part of the panelist group do not see who the other attendees are. They only see the images of the people who are on the panel. So that is the committee and the presenters. So I'm sorry if it's a little bit off-putting, but we will attend to any public input section of the meeting in the same manner that we would in a normal course of events. So that leading that off, we have a quorum, and so let's just jump right into our agenda. And our agenda this evening starts with minutes as available. I don't believe we have any minutes. And so we're going to go right along to our FY21 budget update. And
we do a roll call.
Excuse me?
I'm sorry, roll call vote?
A roll call vote for what?
To open the meeting, or?
Oh, do I have to have a vote to open the meeting? I think I need a vote to open a hearing. I don't know that I need a vote to open a meeting.
This just serves to confirm that each panelist can be heard and is hearing.
Okay, we can do that. I haven't done that on any of my other Zoom meetings, but I'm happy to do it. So let's just, I'm going to go around the grid and just have everybody say here. Mr. Guariello.
Here.
Ms. Zoll.
Here.
Ms. Reynolds.
Here.
Ms. Hartman.
Here.
Mr. Patel.
Here.
Ms. Ortner.
Here.
Mr. Swain.
Here.
Mr. Hickling.
Here.
Mr. Rubenstein.
Here.
Mr. Jameson.
Here.
And I believe that's all of our membership. So I think that's we're all able to be heard. So we're all here. So that's a roll call, and I guess I so declare. So our first order of business this evening is to hear from the superintendent and her finance director, Jared Stanton. So Lori, there you are. Oh, what, are you in a car? This is like
I
fun.
am, because I just lost power. So I'm here, but in the car so you can see me and I don't run out of battery. So,
well, clearly you are not in your garage, so you're not going to get overcome by carbon monoxide or anything like that, trying to keep your power.
Oh, dear. So good thing Jared's in charge tonight. I'm a little out of sorts sitting in the car, but we're glad to be here. We've done a
All
lot
you
of
need to do, Lori, is you need to put a background out there like mine, and
I
then you're gonna, you don't know.
I'm not quick enough, Dean, or I would have done that because I would never sit in the car if I didn't have a choice. So we've done a lot of work since March. We've shared a little bit of that with you along the way. We've rebuilt both budgets, both the regional and the CPS budget. We did do a exhaustive zero-based process that allowed us to review every line. So we've had trades here. So in some places, costs went down because we reprioritized. And in some places, we had COVID-related issues to address. I think I preface all of this with just a quick high-level version of the state of the schools right now. We've rolled out a plan to reopen with the knowledge that we're also deeply building a remote learning plan, not totally knowing what we're going to need. So the hope is to open in person. We know that may not last, though, so we know we need to be able to switch gears and go back to the remote model. And it just needs to be fluid throughout the entire school year. I think it's worth saying that we're not just planning at a high level for groups of kids, but parents are getting the option to be completely remote, even if we do open. So that's another level of planning. And in the models that we've proposed, the kids are not at school full time. The elementary kids would be in half day, and the middle high school kids are going to rotate days, split in half by the alphabet. So we're running multiple things simultaneously. And there'll be a fourth group that if we open, we'll be invited, a small subset of kids, most special needs, that would be invited to stay for the full 5 days. So we are contingency planning in every direction. And what we tried to do was capture the knowns as best we could financially. And I just have to preface all of this by saying that, there's a lot of staffing changes to come as well. We've got a lot of discussion to have with teachers that may not be able to return, making plans to how we address that. And that's equally as fluid. So this is our best work given about as many variables as you could possibly come up with, and trying to anchor it in a place where we feel like we're going to be okay regardless. So all of that said, I think they're fairly conservative budgets given all of those unknowns, and Jared will talk you through the categories. We can talk on COVID relief and what we've had so far available to us. And of course, you're very well of the really unknown revenue pieces that we're getting just a tiny little bit of inkling about. So Jared, shall I turn it over to you?
Please. So I planned on presenting the slide deck that I think you guys saw. Do you want to give me a share screen ability and I can pull the presentation up?
You've been set as a co-host, Jared, so you
perfect.
should be able to go into shared screen. There you go.
All right. So let me do this in.
Before we continue, I'm just wondering if it's possible for the MNN folks, or for you, Chris Carmody, to change the style of the visual boxes for the faces so that it is across the top rather than down the right-hand side. When this was presented at the school committee, I was watching the video via MNN after the fact, and the boxes of people's faces fundamentally block the last column of numbers, which is just not great. So if it can possibly be changed, that would be a good thing for the MNN recorded video. I believe I could probably change the style myself on my own swap. Let's see here. What can I do? I can do this. I can hide. So each of us can control how we see it, but just for the MNN people, maybe just minimize it to just Jared so that the rest of the screen is not obscured, because on the school committee copy of this, that last column got obscured. And sorry, Jared, you go ahead.
Great. Actually, Laurie's going to start us off on this next slide. I don't know if they show
Yeah.
cameras. Oh, good.
Good, thanks. So just to highlight some of the things that we've been doing in terms of the zero-based process, and these are categories, so I can talk a little bit to each. Jared, can you go back one?
I think I did. Yep, there it is. This is the
Perfect.
first one.
Okay, there we go. So we've looked at all the staffing needs. We've maintained our staff given the level of unknown. We know different roles will be doing different things, maybe not what they typically do. For example, we know the nurses are going to need support, so we're looking at possibly utilizing tutors to help them with reception kind of intake and phone calls, because teachers will have to call from classrooms to send kids. So that kind of variant changing of what our level of need will be has left us maintaining all staff. So we're hopeful that we can do whatever those needs are within the staff. There are still discussions there, but we're not asking for more at the moment. Provision of extensive educational software. This was a significant increase for us because as the spring went on, we had to shift everything to the technology setting, obviously. And we realized that it made great sense to utilize, especially content-based software that allowed kids access to different aspects of content, different opportunities for practice, and many and most of them research-based. And so that we are actually moving curriculum while they're utilizing the technology. So that has led to a really rich library of tools that include everything from organizational components like Google Classroom, and Seesaw is a lower grade version of that for the younger kids, to content items like Lexia, which allows reading practice on a phonics research-based reading platform, to an opportunity to be on a digital library like Overdrive and Sora, which we've now provided to all of K-12. So different tools for different purposes, but we are well set up now for whatever this year brings. And obviously, when we're in person, those are useful to us too. They are not just completely remote options. We've been looking at just the pure challenge of the use of supplies and materials. We need to minimize the sharing of items by students, because if they share, we must clean it in between. So we're trying to create a set of a toolkit essentially for each student individually that travels with them and can be their remote toolkit, so that we have more options when they're home. That was a little bit of a hindrance for us in the spring, that we didn't know if kids didn't have the same things available to them. And we then need to just be selective about what we have kids utilizing in a normal way, because it won't be normal. There'll be required cleaning, et cetera. So a couple of places we've really been looking at, the early childhood grades for sure, and then at the upper grades, places like science classrooms and the arts. Ongoing development of scheduling and space usage. We've been rebuilding our schedules from start to finish, thankfully deciding that a lot of what we're used to can still work, both in remote and in the in-person model. Space usage, however, is completely different, and utilizing every aspect of the schools. We've settled on a 6-foot minimum between students, which requires us to really spread out and utilize spaces that we normally would not be using for different purposes. So for example, the library may become a classroom, that kind of reallocation of space. We are going to have to limit access to the buildings and really contain it just to students and permanent staff. So one of our approaches to that is to eliminate daily substitutes. Again, we're going to try to cover that within through some of the support staff and creative use of them. That will allow the per diem part of the traveling not to, expose us to another round of outside potential corona germs. So we're going to try that. We will still be hiring long-term subs. Limited travel of staff. Or students outside the schools. We don't expect to be seeing a lot of field trips this year. In fact, it's prohibited at the moment. So we have cut those lines, now looking at just funding virtual trips. We did have an increased need for summer services, which we built this spring as we got into the summer in the effort to minimize the impact of the 3-month closure. We increased regular education services, all virtual. All of this was virtual. For regular ed to work on basic reading and math skills. And we were also increased in special education services to really try to support kids that needed to receive that intervention and direct service, because if we aren't careful, the loss of service in the spring could lead to compensatory services per the law. So we tried to get ahead of that and be proactive and invited more kids into the summer program.
Can I just interrupt you for 1 second?
Sure.
Are summer services part of the budget of the tail of the prior fiscal year, or are they the next fiscal year? Just where do summer services fall in your budgeting?
They're the next fiscal year. So this is
next fiscal year.
FY21, right?
Okay.
And then professional development, we knew we had a really big list of needs that we wanted to address, and teachers have been very, very engaged. Technology, reworking curriculum, social emotional pieces of all the closure and the impact. We had a mental health crisis before this, so we wanted to be sure to address that, and even into the cultural competency and anti-racist approach. We really took a different, little bit of a different turn on this summer, and we hired our in-house experts to lead the professional development, and teachers have been coming voluntarily in droves to virtual opportunities. And I think we feel really good about what we've offered, and it's been very cost effective. So we're pleased with how that's gone, but it did take some rework. Certain program delivery is still a discussion point. We have direction from the state that we are prohibited to have any singing in the school. We're prohibited to have any airborne instruments, the woodwinds, or otherwise. We know we can't have big group gatherings or even smaller group gatherings, so the theater program will be impacted. And obviously sports is a major impact with the limitations there. We're waiting on MIAA and following the governor's guidance to decide where that goes. So we've been reworking all of that. I don't know that I'd say there's a cost attached, but all of those programs are being dramatically replanned so that we can still offer things to kids. PPE, for sure, we've been looking to make sure staff is safe coming back, and that different things have happened in the schools. We've purchased, 3 months worth of masks, Jared?
Maybe more, but yeah.
Maybe more. The adults and kids are going to be asked to help provide those, the kids especially. The staff, we've purchased transparent masks where we can still see our facial expressions, and we thought that was really important to kids, that those smiling faces weren't hidden behind masks. So that's one piece. We've looked at buying plexiglass where needed, so we've been working through that. Our HVAC is being reviewed this week. We're going to take whatever those recommendations are and decide what we need to do with that. Assuming if there's recommendations for upgrades, we will proceed with that. We're going to be also air quality testing regularly to make sure that the ventilation is adequate across the schools. So those are just pieces of the PPE that we've been buying. Jared can share some of the others. We are looking to put a tent at every school for the fall and spring months. We'll be using that in a versatile way. Health screening tools, we've had mixed early messages from the state. So we are not right now planning on temperature screening students and staff. We did buy a nice supply of thermometers just in case, because that's changed a couple of times. So that's one. We're doing some free things. There are apps out there and things like that where employees can log their symptoms essentially and self-report every morning. And then if they're clear, it reminds them that they can go to work. And it's almost a little self-talk to yourself when you pop into the app, and it clicks you all the way through. And then if you click yes to the symptoms, you should be staying home. We've done that for free on a Google form. So we've been trying to utilize low-cost means of doing the required mandates. We've been looking deeply into the nurses' offices. They are required to have an isolation space, so we've been reallocating space so that they have both their typical space and their isolation space for any students with symptoms COVID-like. We've been buying medical grade PPE for them, and just really working closely with them and Susan Rask at the Board of Health, who's becoming very attached to me, and making sure our protocols are tight. And our work with the public health nurses is very solid, and we all know what to expect should a child get sick or a staff member get sick. Jared's been working with the cleaning and custodial staff as to the protocols we're using there. We've been able to, rather than add custodians, look at the shifts and move some of the shifts earlier into the day so there's more coverage during the day. We did buy electrostatic sprayers that will disinfect through the spray gun, much more efficient and effective means of that. So that'll be something that helps us with the deeper cleaning at night without needing staff. And that just uses our normal disinfectant, so fairly straight costs there. We are providing wipes and sanitizer to every classroom. Russ has done a great job of finding us cost-effective means of doing that too. Social emotional support, we're working to make sure that we're caretaking for kids who've had a lot on their plates and make sure we're addressing that and meeting those needs, even primary to the academic, because if you're not social emotionally well enough to learn, you can't. So that has, in terms of finances, has had minimal cost. It's just a heightened awareness for us and an approach we'll be taking with the kids. Individual supports needing to be available as required. We've looked at a lot of the tools we already utilize through our Open Circle program at the elementary schools and home base and advisory at the upper grades for small group work. We already have an electronic assessment where kids are self-reporting, and that helps us to know who we need to spend time on and support. So a lot of that's been off the work we had already started, which is great. And increased need for intervention services. This is more of a foreshadow of the work we need to do when school reopens in whatever fashion. We will be assessing kids once we're settled, so that we have that data to really understand where they're at after what will have been 6 months out of school at that point. And that'll inform who needs additional support and get our really, thankfully, we've got such a robust RTI model response to intervention that we expect we will have means to intervene and try to prevent any further decline in skills.
Great.
Quick question, Dr. Hunter, if I may.
Sure.
I didn't hear you use the word testing. Will we not have a testing protocol?
So in terms of COVID testing, John?
Yes.
Yeah, so we've been talking a lot about this. My hope, I think all the superintendents had hoped the state would partake in it, and that has not happened and not been the case. I've had a couple of local meetings, one with a company out of Cambridge. Options are very, very expensive to try to do it privately. I guess I'll leave it at that for tonight. We're going to keep pursuing. I have a meeting that Emerson reached out to me this week, so they mentioned testing. I don't know to what capacity, if it would be broad-based. It's a point of frustration, honestly, because it could be helpful if we had the right tools and availability and cost effectiveness there. So more to come. We're working on it to see if anything will come together, and I hope the state might partake as well.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
This is Prosher. Is that testing for students or faculty or both?
We've talked about all three of those groups. So the one group I talked with in Cambridge was willing to test all students and staff once a week for an extraordinary price. So we're strategizing if there's any option there. I don't know if there's capacity through anyone else to do that many. We've debated other options and haven't settled on whether there's a middle ground in there yet or not.
Hey, Dr. Hunter, this is Wade Rubenstein.
Hi.
Transportation?
Great.
What's happening with transportation?
So the state is put out guidelines to us that we can transport one child per seat on the school bus unless they're family members. So that's reducing our capacity per load to about a third of what it normally is. So that's significant, to say the least. Good news is, I think because we landed on a hybrid model at the middle and high school where only half the kids are coming at a time, that is making that feel realistic because we've already diminished capacity significantly. The elementary school, where we felt it was really important for kids to come to school 5 days a week, we are in the process of putting out we've already soft surveyed parents for their ability to help with transportation and had an extraordinary response. So this week we'll actually be putting out a waiver asking if they want to give up their seat, and then we can route buses for the remaining children. Obviously, we want to be sure of equity discussions. Boston is a certain discussion for METCO. Make sure that we're attending and providing for everyone. The goal and hope right now is we can reroute and come out fairly neutral funded. We won't know that until next week. That's where we are at the moment.
Great. Okay, so I will get going. So to understand the FY21 budget, you also need to re-understand the story behind the old FY21 budget that was voted in December 2019, because there are many, sorry, as soon as I start, my kids, guys, please. Because there are many similarities and differences between the two, but only a $5,681 difference. I will compare the two budgets throughout the presentation. We took the same.
Sorry, Jared, if I might, just quick question. I noticed.
No. Sorry, yep. Go ahead, John. Sorry about that.
Sorry about that. I just noticed that this slide deck was labeled August 4th, and the previous one that I had seen was July 27th. Have there been any changes since the 27th? No.
Just change the date.
Just the date. Okay, thank you very much.
Yep. Yep. So we took the same zero-based approach that we took back in the fall, and we reviewed every line. And I think you've heard me say before, because we do the budget so early, it is often outdated soon after the school committee votes it in December, especially when it comes to staffing needs, and we are always looking for ways to improve transparency and process. This budget will look very different than the one you saw this past winter. The process was very difficult due to all of the unknowns we face, which could change drastically at any time. The team had about 4 real weeks to put this budget together instead of the 8 to 10 plus weeks that we were accustomed to. And we had to put this with literally a crisis around us. This was a true team effort, and there was real thought and discussion with every budgeted line. About 2.5 weeks ago, just when I thought I was wrapping up both of these budgets, the state announced a $182 million plan that will give districts and charter schools $225 per student for COVID-19 related expenses dating back to March 1st. This money will greatly help us and may be used as a budget offset. I will explain more about the grant in future slides. So some of you are very familiar with this slide. I think I've used it now 6 times, but for new members and members of the public that are viewing, here are the many categories that we zero-based. The superintendent's revised or new CPS recommended budget for FY21 is $40,777,193, which is 3.52% higher than FY20's school committee approved budget. This chart breaks down the recommended budget by DESI 1000 function. As you can see, I broke down the FY21 budget and compared it to FY20's school committee budget. Throughout this presentation, I will compare the new FY21 budget against the FY20 budget and against the old FY21 budget. So I'm going to ask that if you please just sort of hold all of your questions till the end, because I may be able to answer quite a few of them. It's going to be a lot of numbers flying out. So the superintendent's revised or new CPS recommended budget for FY21 is $5,681 less than the budget that was voted last December. There are some slight changes to many of the functions. This is just a high-level view of these changes, and I will go into further detail throughout the presentation. Instead of breaking down the budget drivers by DESE function, I broke them down into 35 different expense categories. Some of these expense and categories include contract services, equipment, legal, longevity, stipends, maintenance, membership, overtime, PD, and approximately 15 salary categories. The current increase over FY20's budget is $1,387,030 or 3.52%. And I've identified $2,090,110 in budget drivers. The first is a very small amount. It's $25,000 in contingency. This amount brings our total contingency to $150,000 in this revised budget. Next is the special education team chair we hired at the middle school last summer. And since it was created after the FY20 budget cycle, it is now in the FY21 budget. We hired 3 assistant principals for the elementary school after last year's budget cycle. They make up the bulk of this next amount. All 3 assistant principals were hired in-house, and their teaching position was not backfilled, which is the reason why the next line, teacher salary, is only increasing 1.33%. If you include the monies that were transferred to the principal's line, teacher salaries would be up $705,000 or 3.1%. The budgeted tutor FTE increase in FY21 over FY20 is 10. We did not hire 10 additional tutors in FY21. Instead, we originally budgeted to reduce tutors in the old budget, but we now need to retain them since our needs have changed during the pandemic. We also have some.
Can I just add to that, some of those were needs that grew over the FY20 year as well. So it's a combination of those two things.
Right. Like Dr. Hunter just said, we did have some student services that were needed that required one-to-one tutors before the pandemic. Also, these one-to-ones helped keep these students from going out of district, but right now they've become a fixed cost. Student activities. Up until a few years ago, most of the middle school student activities were funded by the Parents Association. They are now partially funded through a revolving account that is dwindling and now needs to be part of our general fund. Due to the need for more remote and hybrid learning, the district needed to purchase more online software in just about every subject area. Between April and June, many of these softwares were free to districts as a trial and will now need to be a fixed cost. Some of these costs could be charged to the COVID-19 grant, again, that I'll talk about in an upcoming slide. The special education tuitions are misleading, as I explained if you remember this past winter. As part of the FY20 budget cycle in December of 2018, we had a very healthy CPS circuit breaker revolving account. And to build the FY20 budget, we increased our general fund circuit breaker offset by $150,000 more than we were expected to get to ease the general fund tuition cost. This past winter, we did not expect to have any circuit breaker rollover, and the additional $150K was not available to offset. The situation has now changed, and I expect to have over $600,000 in the circuit breaker revolving. This was not applied to this budget, but again, could be used if as an offset if the school committee so chooses. Our overall tuition costs are down, which will decrease our circuit breaker reimbursement amount, which was already accounted for in this budget, and for another reason for the increase in the general fund expense. FY21 was the first year offsets were shown in the general fund lines. This gives us the real cost of what the special education tuitions are during the time of budget development. Next is utility costs. They're quite unpredictable. This increase is more in line with the FY19 actuals than FY20 budgeted. There was no change since the winter's budget, but I did want to show that as a driver. Lastly, we still needed to continue our 10-year Bus replacement and 2 new buses will be needed. The electric bus was already built into the FY20 budget. We bought 1 less bus than that was budgeted then in FY20. So overall, we identified just over $2 million in budget drivers. To offset the budget drivers in the new FY21 budget versus the FY20 budget, we identified $617,871 in cost savings. Our contract services are down approximately $141,000, but between special ed and maintenance, we are down over $243,000. In both departments, we are doing more in-house with our own employees. We consolidated the kindergarten contractual lines, and we budgeted translation services in its own line in this revised budget. Special education transportation is increasing $65,861. That is all due to a formula-based, and our toner contract is now in our budget for $26,445. Equipment requests across all district lines were reduced just under $84,000. We only budgeted absolutely necessary equipment, and all additional equipment needed is COVID related. We will most likely charge the bulk of this to the grant. Field trip accounts were reduced significantly since we will not be doing out of district field trips next year. We did leave some monies in there for virtual field trips. We reduced professional development, almost $93,000 across the district. Teachers and staff, as Dr. Hunter said, have really stepped up, taught their own, taught PD classes to each other with a plethora of options. Also, there's no outside PD happening in the near future. We had a reduction in the AIDS lines as well as the clerical lines, although the decrease in clerical is more of a budget correction and not a reduction in FTEs. That was part of last winter's budget. The salary non-union savings is mostly due to the way employees were classified in the FY20 budget versus the FY21 budget.
Jared, real quick question. Sorry. On the special ed transportation, does that take into account the distancing that might happen this coming year, with only having a certain amount of kids on the buses, or is that just a contractual
It's
increase?
A contractual. We work with Case Collaborative, and it's
right.
It's 2 years behind, Laurie. I should know that.
Yes, 2 years behind. They do it based on our ridership the prior fiscal year, and then give it to us during the budget build, and then we pay it the coming year. It's kind of complicated, but it's a formula that I actually think is effective for us. So we don't know what the ridership's going to be on the special education transportation piece yet. So we're waiting clear guidance on that, so Case can help inform us about this year's plan.
So you're saying that Case will then charge us in an upcoming year for what this year actually is?
Yeah, so okay. A year from now we get billed for this year, and then we pay it the following year. So it feels delayed, but over time it evens out the roller coaster you could be on, because it means we're not paying every time a child is entered, and the per capita piece is spread out and level, which is actually very helpful to us.
Okay, thank you.
And lastly, we reduced the in-person substitute lines in the revised budget, resulting in a 47% reduction in this category. We still have monies in our long-term sublines. One of the many reasons we kept all staff was an all-hands-on-deck approach. And filling some of the ways we're going to utilize our subs with our increased staff will be explored. So again, these cost-saving amounts offset the budget drivers, which resulted in the $1.38 million budget increase. So I wanted to compare the FY21 old budget versus the FY21 new budget expenses to show where the biggest cost changes took place. The first is the preschool tuition offset. The old budget had an offset of $140,000 based on historical and projected revenue at this time. Things have changed, and we now expect only $70,000 in revenue. Our anticipated tuition lines from the winter have only increased $21,289. Steady is good. That doesn't mean the increases in tuitions went up. It's just that it went up a little bit from this past winter, but we still had all those offsets that we had to make up. Because we were able to go through every line and zero base them again, we were able to fund the $489,681 increase to the tutor lines and still come in $5,681 under the FY21 old budget. As discussed in the previous slide, our budgeted tutor FTE went up by 10, but the reductions were halted by the pandemic, and a need to keep all staff is crucial. So overall, we identified $580,970 in budget drivers from the FY21 new budget versus the FY21 old.
Jared, I would just add that the preschool piece is a direct COVID issue, that we're not able to bring in as many kids as normal. So we've had to reconfigure schedules. And so our tuition for the general education, regular education students has to drop because we can't bring as many of them in. So I just want to explain that.
Excuse me, can you just describe again why your tutors were unanticipated in the FY21 old, and that this is sort of new information that you're now bringing into the FY21 new budget?
Yeah, I don't know that I'd use the word unanticipated. There are partial definite COVID related pieces to this. So it's two pieces. One is we had additional needs for support to students during the course of last year. So that correction had to happen in the 21 budget. But we also had planned on trying to be more efficient and not need as many tutors. And with COVID, that's an impossibility. So we had to readjust what we had budgeted for in the original budget we brought you. This is a fairly level funded piece in terms of what our needs have been since school closed in March. So it's a moving piece of the money so that we can track the ups and downs of a story that got much more complicated than we expected.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So to find money to fund the tutors, the little bit in tuitions, and the reduction in preschool revenue, we needed to find more cost savings. Many of these are one-year cost savings, but obviously education has drastically changed in the past 5 months, and we hope to continue to identify areas of savings as we progress in these times. These amounts were reduced from the ask in December. So overall, we identified $611,341 in new cost savings. So I broke the FTEs into 13 different types. The budget includes approximately 387.09 FTEs. FY21's budget was the first time we tracked the FTEs this closely. Some administration, clerical, HR, and maintenance staff are split between the two districts. This also does not include our transportation staff. I should say drivers, and includes the managers. So this slide compares.
Where are the drivers then?
Say that again?
Where are the drivers?
So their FTE is sort of hard to figure out because they work all scattered different hours. So they're in the budget, but as an FTE, I did not. That's a formula that I need to work on to figure out how to really show that.
That's fine. Thank you.
Hey, Jared, it's Chris.
Hi.
So the head count is up 7, or not head count, pardon me. The FTEs is up 7.
Yep, and I'm going to explain that.
Okay, but my question goes to that's permanent, right? That head count's going to stay there. And if the offset that you just took us through, and I appreciated your comment, those are 1-year savings. So what happens in 22? We're going to have to figure out how to get offsets for the 7 FTEs somehow?
Well, and I'll let Laurie answer too. I think some of these FTE increases, or many of them, are COVID related. And I think when we're back full time, maybe some of these will not be needed.
Okay. That's what I was trying to figure out. Is this
Yeah.
permanent headcount or not? Okay.
I mean, that's the strength of the zero-based, is that we don't just roll it forward. We always go all the way back and rebuild it. So that will be the plan as we build FY22. Of course, the trick will be predicting where we are in the virus. But other than that, we would definitely review all of that.
Okay. I appreciate that. Thank you.
So to sort of point this out again, some of that is identified in the tutor line where you have 10 new FTEs, Chris. And as Jared just described it, they had planned, or as Dr. Hunter did, they had planned on sort of tailing away from some of those tutors because they felt they could do it. But because COVID came in, they had to keep the tutors at a high level, at a high number. So it is possible that when we get back to sort of the old normal, they may be able to bring that tutor line that's really kind of seems like it's ballooned back into line, or back where they thought they would be able to go.
Yep.
I don't want to put words in your mouth.
No, that's actually quite accurate, Dean. I think we want to be sure we're also mentioning the special education programs having impact on that as well. So some of the programs that we've built require pretty extensive individual or very small group support. And so those needs are fluid also. So it's a combination of all of that, but the intent has been to regularly review the tutors and make sure that we're being well served by them, which of course we are in most cases, and just to look to see where there are efficiencies to be found. COVID derailed that whole plan, so.
So yeah, this slide just shows, the difference in the FTEs between the 221 budgets. The total increase you see in the tutors is 489,000, but the total increase is only 274,000 overall. So in addition to the general fund, we receive additional federal and state grants that offset expenditures. We budgeted 290,000 for METCO salaries, 138,000 for Title I. We did have to reduce the $70,000 preschool tuition offset. So the grant, the $225 per student grant that we're expecting is $225 per pupil. Expenses that are only COVID related. And here are some of the things that we can use them for. We bought well over 30,000 masks. We're getting tents for each building, 2 at the Sanborn, sanitizers, plexiglass, etc. Number of softwares. And what we're doing is we're keeping a very tight list of what we're spending the money on and what we're going to be charging against the grant. I know that we will be audited on that, but it's something that we have a real-time up-to-date sheet on.
So Jared, the expenses are in the budget, but the offset is not?
So because we only got this monies about 2.5 weeks ago, we readjusted our budget a little bit 2.5 weeks ago. A lot of these things will not be in the general fund. They will be charged directly to the grant. So many of the lines and maintenance, et cetera, do not include these costs because we now have this money to charge it to.
Okay, so expenses that could be charged against the grant are not intended or are not included in your budget.
Correct. Yep.
Okay, so they're both the revenue and the expense will be outside.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
What about, so the METCO salaries and the Title I, so are those monies that you are confident you're going to receive, or will those be reduced or at risk of reduction?
I'm always very conservative when it comes to our grants. I don't expect them to be reduced greatly. I always put in for potential 3% decrease. In years past, they don't really touch these grants. A lot of times, circuit breaker and Chapter 71 regional transportations are usually the first things that they reduce. But this is not something that I'm anticipating a big decrease in.
Okay, so the first 3 offsets are included in your budget. The 4th one is not.
Correct. Yep.
Okay, thank you.
You got it.
And we've already received that CARES Act money, Jared?
We have not yet. We are anticipating it. We do need to apply for it, but it's all but guaranteed.
Okay.
Yeah.
Jared,
Time frame is
Jared?
probably difficult to guesstimate.
Say that again.
I imagine the time frame is difficult to guess at.
I'm thinking either later on this month or in September.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So, and I'm going to go into it when we get to the high school, but the 468 is only for CPS.
Jared, this is Dee, and I have a question on what you can purchase.
Mhm.
Which you have here, one of the items is laptops for remote working. Will that be for students or will that be for educators or?
Technically, it could be for both. Right now, it was for staff, and that's what we do have monies in our hardware lines for students. So the laptops for staff for remote working is for staff.
Thank
So-
you.
Yeah, so Jared, I don't know if now's a good time or not, but I've been following the discussion at the school committee about the equipment, the laptops for K through 5. I'm interested in your response. And so potentially, is this a solution to part of that issue of having to buy more computers?
And Laurie, I'll let you answer, but no, it's something that will need to be a fixed cost in our budget if we decide to go lease. And we have about $180,000 between our 3 elementary schools, and we're confident that that number will fall hopefully in between what we have budgeted. Any additional amount for this year only could be charged to the grant if we so choose. But going into 22, 23, 24, which believe it or not, I am thinking about, we do already have that monies in there. So we don't have to come up with additional funds to fund the laptops.
Greg, you had your hand up.
Yeah, Jared, I had a question. One, I don't know if I missed it maybe. How much of the 468 is already allocated? And then my second question, sort of portion to that would be, if you did need, for example, a lot more PPE and we've already spent this money, where would that then come from?
Right. So we spent about 150,000, give or take right now. A lot of that was last year and some of that was prepaid, especially at the high school. We are getting additional monies for FY21 through the CARES Act. I believe it's about $93,000 that I plan on. I have to use that between now and December of 2022. That might be something that I push off into the FY22 budget. That's why I did not put that here. So whatever monies that we need to spend on PPE over the 468 would need to come from the general fund. But we are, I was not anticipating this money, especially when we're doing this budget. And I think this is going to do hopefully everything that we need.
So you're pretty confident. Sounds like you're pretty confident in that. Good. Thank you.
Hey, Jared, this is Wade Rubenstein here. What about food services? Where is that in the budget? And is there additional money for food insecurity?
So food service is actually a revolving account. We are self-funded at both CPS as well as the high school. Last year, we did take a loss, well over 100,000 in each. We were able to put that monies back because of the savings of really having a closed school for 3.5 months. I was able to get our food services back in good standing, which is about 3 months worth of expenses. So that is not included in our general fund. It's just a revolving account, but we have very healthy revolving accounts.
Can I talk on the food insecurity? Because that's been a real passion project for us. Since we closed, we've been providing food to the community in the form of groceries on a regular basis, daily, every weekday through the school year, and then a couple of mornings a week through the summer. That was funded initially through over $40,000 worth of donations from the community that paid for the food. And since then, we have been really fortunate to partner with 2 local community groups. Gaining Ground has been providing unbelievably fantastic produce regularly. And as the summer started, Open Table has taken over the supply chain for us to the most part. And we are getting a weekly delivery from them now. So that's been an important piece of our work in trying to support the community. We've been able to provide for Carlisle as well. And because it's all been donations, it's been able to be available to senior citizens and not just the family-based groups, which was also important to us. And we're talking now with Gaining Ground and Open Table about continuing some level of service through the school year. So it's been really positive work.
Thank you very much.
Great. Do you have a question, Christine?
I do. I don't want to, I'm just trying to understand something. This is like the little accountant in me, Jared. I'm trying to figure something out on this CARES thing. So on the CARES thing, the revenue is going to come to you in FY21, but you had expenses presumably in FY20. So I assume you don't go back and restate FY20. So I think you get a pure offset with no expense potentially in FY21, which is kind of a good thing, right? You spent the money in 20 for initial rounds of PPE and so forth, but you'll be able to apply through the grant for expenses you incurred back till May of 2020, even though you'll be in FY21 when you get the money.
Great. Yeah. So we would be allowed to go back to March 1st. And then we have until December 31st to use this. And you can use it on things like unemployment. There are a number of things you can use this on. You can't use it on redoing your HVAC. That's not something that they would approve or big, but PPE, unemployment, anything really COVID related, which I can easily identify $468,000 on that.
Already that you spent?
Well, I know that we will be able to, and there are things that,
right. You'll be able to consume it. That's good. Yeah. Okay.
So, can I get a little more clarity? Because I do think I understood what Chris was saying, but now I'm understanding differently based on what Jared is saying. It sounds like you're getting credits for expenses incurred in the prior fiscal, and you're getting the funds in the FY21 fiscal. But then there's like a catch. Not only did you spend it on COVID-related stuff in the prior year, and so here's some money for having done that, but now you get the money, you have to spend it on COVID-related things again? I don't quite understand. Is it like a double hit?
No, my intention, truthfully, is not to go back to March 1st. This can, supplement the FY21 budget. There are definitely $468,000 worth of FY21 expenses that will occur that could be used for this.
Okay.
So now if I had trouble finding $468,000 by December 31st, then I would go back and I would charge some things that we budgeted, we expended in FY20. I haven't yet figured out that mechanism, though, of how we do that, because I think it would be easier in the region, but I don't know how that would really work in at CPS. But again, I don't anticipate going back and trying to charge prior year expenses.
Okay, that makes it a lot cleaner.
That makes it a lot easier.
I just clarify that because it's a pretty broad base as to what could apply, things we've mentioned to you that we have budgeted for because we rebuilt the budgets, the software increase of $130,000, even the tutors we kept that are now there to help us manage COVID, we could allocate all of that over there where we just got the money. So we haven't even had a chance to have that conversation. That'll be part of the discussion with the school committee over the next couple of weeks as to how they want to manage the funds.
Yep.
So
Thank
this
you.
is
So
Prasher.
Jared, go ahead.
Are we assuming then, excuse me, that the budget you just presented doesn't include the offset for 468? Could you envision spending beyond what you just presented to use up the 468? Is that what you're contemplating?
If I understand that correctly, so yeah, the 468 would be in addition to. Now, I do expect to have more than 468, worth of COVID-related expenses. As Laurie just stated, tutors alone were 489,000. So, but this will offset some of our unexpected costs that we're going to certainly have in FY21, and that's why. I was asked if I could zero base the 468. We couldn't do that right now. We don't know what we need yet. So
that's part of the discussion with the school committee. Is this money going to continue to be contingency, or are we going to use it to offset what we've already done and change budget numbers? I think right now, given so many unknowns in front of us, Jared and I would be recommending that we leave it available as contingency money. But that is a conversation the school committee hasn't had a chance to have yet. They've only seen this set of numbers a week ago, and we're going to have a budget workshop tomorrow and then again meet next week. So more discussion to come on money that we are grateful to have that we didn't know we were going to have.
Jared, this is Mary. I have a question. I want to get us grounded on this slide for a minute. If I understand it correctly, you're saying that these are the offsets to the increase to your budget because of the tutors. Are there any other offsets besides the ones here? Forget the CARES Act for a minute, but did you prepay any expenses? Are there any other offsets?
No. So CPS and the high school were very different. The high school, we did have some monies that we were able to prepay.
Right.
At CPS, we did not prepay really anything other than, like some PPE items such as, sanitizer, backpack sprayers, a little bit, nothing huge amount, $20,000, $30,000. The other thing, and I will get into this in a little bit more detail in a bit, is we did not expect to have any circuit breaker carryover. Now, we were allowed to carry over the amount we received the prior year, which was over $1 million. I was expecting to have zero, based on where we were this past December, due to us essentially being shut down for 3.5 months. We did see some savings, and we will have $600,000+ in our circuit breaker revolving account that is not reflected in this budget, and that will also be a topic with the school committee as to what they would like to do with that money, keep it as a contingency or offset. It'll be sort of like the same conversation about the 468.
Great. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. So can I follow up on that, Jared, just so I understand? So when you closed out 2020, what was left?
We're still we're almost done, but just over 600,000. So we got the dollar down to zero. And then what we did was we were able to plug the holes that were in deficit. First was food service. We put back some monies in the middle school revolving account, athletics, and student activity accounts. Not huge money, but enough that gave us a little bit of a cushion. And then the biggest one was the circuit breaker that I expected to have zero, and I'll have between 600 and 700,000, I think.
And the amounts that get put into those other revolvers for food and extracurricular and so forth, those can only be used for those purposes. Is that right?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. So those amounts, so you have a little bit of cushion in your revolvers. You have 600,000 in circuit breaker. You don't have E&D in CPS?
No, we're just another department of the town when it comes to CPS.
Okay. So it's really, you have the 150,000 earmarked contingency, and you have potentially 600,000, plus you have this 468 in the CARES Act. So $1 million is kind of the cap, or the range, I should say, of what you have for potential contingency, depending on what the school committee wants to do.
Right.
Yep. So we could either use that to offset your 21 budget, or we could hold it.
Right. And I'm more worried about, and I've said this many times, really the future, FY22 and 23.
Me too.
FY22 will be a lot harder than FY21's.
I agree.
I do too.
Yeah. Okay, thank you very much.
Great, thank you. So I'll try and fly through these next ones. So the next is just the tuitions. We have $2,318,949 in total tuitions. Below is the amount of total offsets. It's important to note that the circuit breaker offset was reduced more than $300,000. That is the reason why the tuition was a budget driver. At this time, we have about 26 out of district students at CPS.
So we didn't prepay anything yet, or we, you know, I know.
Not at, no, not at the.
Not at this level.
Yeah,
Okay.
and my recommendation truthfully would have been to make sure we had 100% of our circuit breaker rollover before we prepaid anything. And I'll get into this at the high school. At the high school, we did prepay quite a bit, but I was able to carry over the max in our E&D. I mean, in our circuit breaker.
Okay.
Yeah, and E&D, but great. So FY21 was the first year we budgeted the preschool offset. Back in the winter, we again expected 140,000 in revenue. At this time, we were only projecting 70. So in the new budget, you can see that every category was decreased in the revised budget, but the only reason we show a reduction of 10,674 is again because of the 140 to $70,000 offset. Next is the district-wide elementary. That's decreasing 23%. This is mostly because we move all of our special education tuitions to district-wide. This equates to 475,000 of that reduction in this location. District-wide field trips were reduced here. Supply lines have increased in the district-wide elementary due to the increases in district-wide reading and district-wide curriculum teaching supplies and materials. These increases are COVID-19 related, and these could be charged. So this could be an offset potentially. It could be charged to the grant. The new budget is $97,138 more than the old budget. FTEs are the same, but we redid our summer school costs, as Dr. Hunter stated earlier, and moved them mostly to this location, which is contributing to the increase in teachers' total cost, which is the biggest increase shown here.
Could you back up one, please? I just want to look at one thing.
Yep.
Thank you. So this is a presentation of the district-wide elementary budget, but it says tuitions were moved to district-wide location. And so this is a reduction, but this is the district-wide presentation. So that's the line I didn't understand.
Oh, so yeah, confusing. So we have, I do our budget by location categories. So our location categories are preschool, district-wide elementary, then the 3 elementary schools, then the middle school, and last is a district-wide that does not, it's not elementary, it's everything.
I got it. It's everything. It's not, this is district-wide elementary.
Elementary.
I got it. I see. Okay, thank you. It's just, there are too many district-wide. I didn't understand.
Yeah, I'm trying to consolidate. Trying.
Okay, thanks, Jared.
So next is Alcott. Alcott is increasing 4.75% over FY20's budget. The increases will be consistent actually in pretty much all of the elementary schools, increases in the assistant principals lines, increases in tutors, and increases in teachers lines. The Alcott revised budget is 0.92% higher than FY21's old budget. The increase in to the tutor line here, there is an increase, but you can see that there were reductions across the board in other areas and a small increase in curriculum textbooks. Overall, the Thoreau school budget is increasing 1.44%. Special education contract services have decreased. The teachers line has decreased due to the assistant principals monies being moved out, a reduction in a section of kindergarten, and some attrition from FY20's retirements. The tutors and aides lines have also increased. The revised Thoreau budget is 1.53% less than the old budget, even though there was an FTE increase. We will be reducing a section in kindergarten due to the enrollment. That was picked up after the old budget. Willard is increasing 1.66%. Again, special education contract services are down, in this case, over 48%. There's other swings consistent with the other two elementary schools and the tutors, teachers, and assistant principals lines. We have increased 0.07% over the old budget. You can see that the FTEs have increased. There's a need for an additional section in fourth grade, which was identified after the winter's budget. But due to the reductions in other areas, the new Willard budget is only $4,614 more than the old budget. The middle school, overall, the middle school is only increasing 1.55% over FY20's budget. There are a number of reasons why, though. Contract services are down. The admin line has gone up. This is due to the team chair position that was hired last summer. The teachers' lines have increased due to all the work we did last summer in special education and other areas of need. Tutor needs increased throughout the year, including some additional one-to-ones. The student activities line is now budgeted. This was a $40K increase over FY20's budget. Lastly, special education tuitions were moved to the district-wide line. So that's the reason why it's only up 1.55%.
Jared, the student activities, what's an example of it?
Sure, it's some of the coaches that we pay. The extracurriculars, chess. Why am I drawing a blank, Laurie? A number of just our clubs and some other things that were the parents' associations used to pay for. So even some field trips. So the definition of a student activity account. For this purpose is it has to really pay for the group as a whole. So anything that benefits all of our kids. So clubs, field trips, pizza for everybody, stuff like that. Not that we do that, but stuff like that.
Okay.
So the revised budget only increased $995 from this winter's request. There was a large increase in tutors since the winter budget, but as you can see, it was offset by a number of other reductions. Last location. So here's the district-wide Ripley. Overall, this location has increased 20.72%. The increased contingency is here. Contract services are up, mainly due to the Yankton contract and special ed transportation. We took a look at our equipment needs and made some adjustments. Salary non-union is the budget correction. It's an offset here. Tuition, as you can see, represents the biggest increase because we moved everything to the district-wide account. So overall, the increase is 20.72% or $1.4 million in this location. And finally, the district-wide location revised budget is $57,985 less than the winter's request, and minimal changes between the new and old budgets. and that is the CPS presentation.
Chris, go ahead.
I just wondered whether you, Jared, or Dr. Hunter can speak to the plan or the proposal for the laptops in the elementaries.
Sure, I'm happy to. And forgive me, I'm now sitting in the car in the dark, so I'm not going to. The power's still out, so.
Oh, no.
So bear with me on that. Anyway, it's making it a more interesting meeting, to be honest. Yeah, so we've been debating literally for the last week, which is a very short amount of time, but that is the new pace we are on since March, that everything is happening fast. We really reviewed the needs of K-5, and knowing we were going to be rolling out at minimum an afternoon of remote learning, and a fairly strong likelihood that we think we're going to end up closing again and questioning the viability of opening, we decided we really needed to look at one-to-one options for the youngest grades. We typically, by desire, are not one-to-one because we don't want to see all our youngest kids on computers all day long. And instructionally, that definitely works. So that was the need that got named. And that's a statewide discussion. The state has been very clear with the school districts that they should be working this through this summer and making sure that all kids have access. So what we did the last week is look at what our options were, primarily focused on the numbers that have been budgeted already in the first version of the budget at $60,000 per elementary school. Probably the biggest thing to name up front is that we had gotten behind in the replacement cycle at the elementary schools. And so there's some catch up to do. 80% of our tools at the elementary school are 5 years and older. And so we knew that need was coming and could not be deferred anymore. However, now we're into a crisis type of mode, trying to determine how we can get on track for not just fixing the replacement cycle, but we want to provide one-to-one when that had never been the goal. So we've reviewed the last few days, and I wish I could say we'd spent longer on it, but this is becoming the new way we operate. We looked at what the options were. You all know we're an Apple-based district because we believe in the quality of the machines, and we indeed have been getting 5 years and longer pretty reliably. That isn't the case with most of the other devices. That said, we did look at Chromebooks for this opportunity. We've done research on iPads, and then we did price the laptops. Part of the shifting thought was that we wanted to see if this then could help with the replacement cycle and not just be a one-time Band-Aid purchase that allowed us to get by this year, but didn't really address the big picture needs. And the only way to make a Band-Aid purchase that was just within the 180,000, because it's 60 per school, was to go Chromebooks. And the more we talked with our colleagues, the more we heard the back order, the more we did research on that, we grew less sure that that was the best plan. We started to talk with Apple more on what the options are. What we're eventually going to do when we're post-COVID, so what we talked with the school committee about last night and look like we're going forward with is to lease the machines. And that would be a 4-year lease that would lock us in to the just under the 180 per year. So yes, we absolutely acknowledge there's cost there. But what it'll allow us to do post-COVID is to take these 5+-year-old machines and begin to take them offline, which that's going to happen anyway, because they're not going to last much longer, and they're going to drop off on us and leave us in a problem. Start to build the replacement cycle with these so that we then shift them back to the 2-to-1 kind of mindset across the schools. And we are in a nice long-term stable place to be, all within the budget that we built. So I guess my last comment, and then we'll be happy to take questions. When I came in, we had 1-to-1 at the middle and high school, and we really didn't have a stable funding stream for that. It had been done, but not funded for the long term. So that's been much of the work of the last 3 years, has been focusing on the middle and high school, the high school especially, to build line items that stay stable and don't don't force us to bring to you in a coming year, all of a sudden we need $500,000, $700,000 worth of stuff all at once. So we've really been able to stabilize those. You're not seeing big jumps in the technology lines. And that is what will happen here, is that the elementary lines will stay stable and we will be completely updated and good to go for the near and longer term future. So it was a rush decision, frankly, more so than we would have ever liked. But we feel like there's not just a Band-Aid getting put in place, but we're addressing the big picture issue as well. So.
Thank you.
So are these going to be? Are these going to be computers then, or are they going to be?
Yeah, they are. Yeah, Greg, we're looking at laptops. We've had, I don't know if any of you on the school committee know, we talked quite a bit with them about the younger grade kids. They could be, there are things that often work on iPads, but we're seeing that we are growing more confident in the long-term viability of the laptops and the extras that come with it, with app costs and keyboards. And so this was a recommendation from the technology specialists at the schools. In terms of educational quality, yes, we can do everything on the laptop, but we have a lot more options I do everything on the iPad, but we have more options even with the youngest kids on the laptops.
Yeah, I didn't see how you'd phase out the older equipment with obviously iPads. Thank you.
Right, and that'll be the long-term piece that we gain.
Andrea, I'd like to recognize Andrea.
Dr. Hunter, I think you mentioned several times anticipating shutting down again, which isn't surprising. What would happen? How quickly could you shift to complete remote? If, say, end of October, mid-October, November, schools had to shut down again?
Yeah, good question. In the spring we did it really quick, but what we built remote was not an attempt to replicate an entire school day, and that is what we're building this summer. So we've been working on building schedules that apply no matter which mode we're in, and building tools that allow us to be fluid with those, which is a lot of the technology you're hearing. We're very well versed now in Zoom. I don't know if you've met a 5-year-old lately, but they're really good at this. So we inadvertently, I know Greg's smiling because I know his kids are on all the time. Inadvertently, we've created those skills in kids, and our teachers have done a lot of PD so that they can transition quickly from in-person to that mode. In fact, all of them are going to be doing that anyway, because none of the kids are in school full time. So we're going to be mixing modalities constantly, which actually is going to set us up to be able to go back full remote as needed. And hopefully the other way too. That is always my hope, that we continue to have in-person time at least throughout the year. We can't hold it initially.
Thank you, Mary.
I'm wondering if this would be a good time to talk about the CPS capital plan.
Sure.
We stay on the budget but just put that on hold and put it to the side for 1 minute, Mary.
Then I have a question about the budget. Can you tell us the price differential between sticking with laptops versus going to the iPads? How much money what's the cost difference?
Yeah, I wish I had that right in front of me. The iPads were $359 a machine without the extras that you need. And I don't have those costs off the top of my head. Jared, do you have the number in front of you for the laptops? I can't get to my stuff in the dark here. It's probably $800 or $900 off the top of my head.
Yeah.
8 or 9 per?
Yeah. Per, yeah.
But
and how many are you doing? How many do you refresh a year?
We're doing about 7. Go ahead, Laura.
Yeah, that's the problem. We haven't been refreshing them. So this is to go 1-to-1 is going to be a significant purchase of 725 of them.
And do you get credit for the units that are retired?
We do. Believe it or not, even some of the really old ones will still get us a little money back, 6, 7, 8 years old. We tend to use them till there's not a lot of life in them. So it's marginal, but we like that part of the way this works.
Harsha.
Jared,
You're
Jared and
looking at
Laura,
just under 1,000, because the computer is about 779, but then the Apple Care is another 183.
Right, which Apple Care would pertain to either device.
So what's the difference again? I'm sorry. What's the,
So 779 versus 357.
so it's more than half the cost. Okay. I mean, it's more than twice as much. The laptop versus the iPad is more than twice as much.
Yes.
Okay.
Harshaw, you had a question.
thanks, Dean. I appreciate the overview of the budget, not only kind of, the pre-COVID budget and then the post-COVID budget. And Jared, I think you said that you haven't yet calculated what the impact of COVID was on the fiscal year 20 spend. Are you planning at some point to go back and say, this is kind of the COVID-related spend for fiscal year 20? Here's COVID for fiscal year 21, so that we've got some sense of what we might be able to sort of drop back down to a baseline, I'm fiscal year 22, if not 23.
Actually, tomorrow I'm going to be, I'll be presenting that information tomorrow to the school committee. What to the penny was spent in FY20, and then what to the penny right now we've spent in FY21.
Okay, thank you.
Any other budget questions before we move off this presentation? I have one, and that is when we went through the different building budgets, Alcott sort of stuck out as being an increase of over 4% when the others were around 1.4, 1.6 plus. They were in the very small modifications, but Alcott seemed to have jumped out at me. And can you just kind of describe why Alcott, just a little bit higher increase there?
Sure. So the biggest reason for Alcott was the tutors, and I'm trying to get that amount. So
I kind of went back and looked at that, and there's increases in the tutors on each of the elementary budgets that are in the 150, 165 kind of range for each of the buildings. And I didn't think Alcott was totally out of line in terms of their tutor uptick. So I couldn't find it there. I just sort of
right. And I'm looking now. So the total increase was 4.75. Tutors. So the tutors was 164. Teachers was 88, and then the salary, the principal line went up 138. I mean, we still went through, they pretty much reduced, the same amount of equipment, same amount of supplies and materials. Utilities, same increases. Pretty much those are the main reasons. Looking at Thoreau had a big decrease actually in teachers, and that was due to a number of retirements that came in after FY20 and through attrition. Their tutor line did go up 164,000.
Yeah, that was the thing. I was looking at the tutor lines, and they look pretty even across the buildings, and so that didn't seem to explain it. That's all.
So I think I also have it. Willard also, their teachers line went down 110,000. So Alcott's, their teacher line.
Can I hop in, Jared?
Please.
I do think some of it's reductions at the others. Alcott also has an additional section than the others, and it's also housing one of our intensive special education programs. I think some of that all adds up and creates differences. That the special education program is new there this past year. So we definitely had to add some supports along the way, where the other buildings either had existing programs where we added some support, but not the same amount, or don't have that same level of intensity.
Thank you. Fine. Dee.
I just have a couple of questions. Jared, maybe you can answer this one really quickly. The contingency of 150,000, is that for unknown events or unknown for the next year, correct?
Whether
So
that Yep. New
Okay,
hires,
so,
special education, et cetera.
I'm sorry?
Usually for new hires or special education, the unknowns.
Okay, so I guess my question to both of you would be, what's your biggest concern that's going to blow this budget up?
I only get one, D. The biggest concern.
Well, give me the top three.
Yeah, no, there's so many unknowns, and there's actually just as much possibility we may save money when we close, which is horrific, right? It's not the way we want to go, but when that's the necessity for safety, we actually save money. So it could be that it evens out. I'm talking a lot with teachers and what their needs are right now. So we may have some paid leave of absences that we're going to have to manage. That's on my mind greatly this week. So I guess that'll be my answer for tonight. Special education, always. We haven't been firsthand with kids in 6 months. So we're going to be learning a lot about where they are as they come back. So that's going to be an unknown that, you know, could turn into something. We're trying to strategize it proactively, but we can't be sure.
So do you feel that the contingency that might be allocated for what Jared was saying, is that going to be a sufficient amount, or is it just your best guesstimate right now?
With circuit, I'm going to answer for him and watch to see what he says. With circuit breaker reinstated, I'm comfortable. If we were at 0 in circuit breaker, we would have had to up the contingency number. But I think the fact that the reserves got put back at least enough that we could talk about having some there. Maybe we don't need all 600. We'll talk with the school committee, but that makes me much more comfortable than otherwise.
Okay.
And I'm never comfortable.
He's never comfortable. That's true.
No, I think just as Dr. Hunter said, the 600,000 in circuit breaker was unexpected. And then also that 468. So I think we should be okay.
Thank you.
Any further questions on the CPS budget presentation? Okay.
One quick question.
Wait.
MCAS testing requirements for next year. What do you hear from the state?
Yeah, good question. We haven't heard officially. The talk early in the summer was that things were going to hold. I know there's definitely concern among the superintendents about what the testing system looks like after all this is going on and in the middle of it. So I expect that'll be an ongoing discussion as the year comes along.
Chris, you're muted there.
Or Dr. Hunter, there was discussion of early retirement potentially coming back as a program. Is that still on the table?
Yes, the school committee talked about it last night. You'll remember in 2017 and the information we've shared since then that it served us well when we offered an incentive. So we last night approved that, and I rolled it out to the teachers today as a very short-term, one-time opportunity. They have a week to get back to me, literally just to try to help offer options. We have teachers really, needing to decide what's best for them and their health. And from our side, we want it to be a win for teachers for sure, but knowing there were a good number of potential paid leave of absences, it was a wise option to put out to see if there was interest. So we'll keep you posted. It's very quick, literally a week. So I'm grateful the school committee is willing to consider it. We're in the mode of giving teachers and families as many options as possible right now to try to help them make this environment doable for them.
Great, thank you.
Phil has his hand up.
It's not a question. It's just, I want to commend Lori and Jared on a tremendous financial presentation and in general, their tremendous leadership during this crisis. It's been, regardless of the financial, it's been unbelievable how much work you've been doing. It's exemplified by you're doing this call from your car and with your kids in the background. So thanks a lot.
Well stated.
Here, here.
Yay!
We appreciate that.
Okay. So I think we're now ready to move on to the CCRSD budget and
Right.
look at that.
Dean, you said that we could talk about the
Oh,
capital.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Mary. You're absolutely right. I did.
So while we're on the topic of FY22, I looked at your capital budget, and I know that you still. I was at one of your school committee meetings, and I remember that the head of your maintenance department was there, and he was talking about the fact that in fact you could defer the replacement of the RDU units, and I don't think there's any argument that you definitely need to replace those. But I'm wondering if it would be wise to defer that so that, in fact, as you know, the cost for that's going to hit in FY22, I assume. So I'm wondering what happened between that particular conversation I heard where they could be deferred and what I saw in your latest budget.
Sure. You want me to start, Jared?
Please.
We talked about this last night as well. The school committee's been meeting twice a week lately, so they're hard to keep up with. We met last night and revisited. Russ was on a week ago, Mary's right, and just with that exact conversation, most of the $900,000 we were requesting was for ERU replacements at Alcott and Thoreau. We weighed this pretty heavily. It's been on our radar to talk about since spring. And what we settled on last night, we lost this year for any of that this summer, which had been a very aggressive plan we had made this winter, and we couldn't execute on any of it. So we feel like we've already by default had a deferment. And I think the concern is growing about the longevity. I know Russ said this, but we've been doing ERU repairs regularly for years. So I get more and more concerned that there's going to be a bigger failure than what we've had. Plus there is efficiencies in terms of sustainability and energy. So we have put it in at what we had initially proposed to you. And Jared, I don't know if you have those right in front of you, 690,
I think.
Thank you. Yeah. So we did vote that last night to leave that. As part of the 900. We did go through all of the other requests that were there to be sure we only asked for what we needed. So we did reduce the 900,000 by 20,000 and deferred a exhaust pipe that needs to get moved at Willard. And we deferred, or maybe we won't need, we've had other funding opportunities. We need to build an inclusive playground at Thoreau sometime when this is settled down some. We've had generous support from the PTG. And so we deferred, or maybe we won't need that money that was going to go to that. So we lowered the 900 by 70,000 last night in an attempt to do as you're asking and really reflect on what we need. So that was what the school committee's vote was last night.
Regarding the practical nature of the ERU replacements, are they something that can be done during the school year, or does it require kind of shutting down the building because it's part of the air circulation system?
Right.
Would it be done over a holiday period, or when would it be scheduled?
The school would need to be vacant, so it would be done over a vacation, or the day after school ends. We would be competing probably with summer school. What's that? We saying something, Laurie?
The way Russ described it to me, and I think he said it in some of the public meetings, there's an economy of scale here. So that's one benefit of having the funds. And he would be expecting to want to place orders this winter so that we'd have them on site as soon as school is out. So there is a benefit to getting the money this fiscal year for a summer set of work next summer. It is complicated. You're right. There's cranes and all of that involved.
Right.
So. Yeah. And the other thing is too, I would bid it out right away. So to get locked into those costs.
Yeah, thank you.
Yep.
Okay.
And I know you didn't ask about it, but the chiller at Willard as well, that's something that we did leave on our list. We're constantly repairing that. And if that is something that does go, then there'll be no AC at at Willard. So we're spending money on repairs on that right now as we speak.
Okay, thank you.
Great.
I think we can move on now to the regional budget.
Wonderful. Close it down. Sorry, I had it up and then I closed it. Oh no, it's right here. Sorry, I'm just trying to find it in all of my open pages here.
Do you have it?
I do, it's up, but I can't see it on my share. On my share thing. Let me try it this way. Try it again. Okay, here we go.
There it is.
All right. Can you see it now, or is it still in the non-slideshow template? I might have to do another screen.
Can't see it yet.
Yeah, okay. I have too many screens here. How about, all right. How about that?
That's it.
There you go.
All right. So being conscious of your time, why won't this work? The first couple slides are the same as the last one. So we had the same approaches to the budget, same exact thing. So the zero-based budget process was the same. But the difference between the old FY21 budget and the new FY21 budget is actually a $300,847 difference. And again, that's something that I will compare throughout the presentation. And again, those are all of the things that we zero-based. So the superintendent's revised their new CCHS recommended budget for FY21 is $35,144,038, which is $456,305 or 1.32% higher than FY20 school committee approved budget. This chart breaks down the new recommended budget by DESI 1000 function. As you can see, I broke down the new FY21 budget and compared it to FY20's school committee budget. And again, throughout this presentation, I will compare the new FY21 budget against the FY20 budget and against the old FY21 budget. The superintendent's revised or new high school recommended budget for FY21 is $300,847 less than the budget that was voted on last December. There are some slight changes to many of the functions. Again, this is just a high-level view of that, and I'll go through more throughout the presentation. Again, instead of breaking down the budget drivers by DESI function, I broke them down into 53 different expense categories. There was 35 of them at the CPS. Some of these include athletics, banking, contingency, contract services, debt, equipment, fees, insurance, maintenance, OPEB, overtime, PD, and approximately 17 different salary categories. For something to be a budget driver in the high school budget, it had to have a difference of over $30,000 from the previous year. we identified $1,166,965 in budget drivers between the FY20 budget and the new FY21 revised budget. The first is guidance salary. Guidance staff increased from 9 FTEs to 10 FTEs after the FY20 budget was formed, but through some attrition, the additional FTE and the projected steps and lanes are only causing this expense type to go up $42,356. The next was a budget correction in the IT department, which accounted for $25,816 of this increase. Every year, we offset campus monitor positions by $50,000 with the parking lot revolving account. We reduced the offset by $25,000 because we did not expect to get the same parking revenue for next year. We hired a special education coordinator at the high school last summer, and the salary is now in the budget. There is an increase in contract services, but mainly due to the increased amount in special ed transportation and the ink toner, just like in CPS.
Before you move off that slide, on the special education coordinator, is that a shared expense with CPS, or is that a unique position to the district?
That is a unique position to the high school. Our insurance pension lines are only increasing approximately 2.56% in FY21. This is partly due to some of the employees taking advantage of the high deductible plan option the town introduced in FY18. Thank you, Carrie. This plan limits long-run growth and healthcare spending by encouraging beneficiaries to price shop for non-emergency services. We are currently in negotiations with teachers, but their combined lines have increased 4.97%. The tutor line has also increased 13.17%, but this is a budget correction, which happened, I explained that back in the winter, and the increases happened after the FY20 budget was formulated. Again, utilities unpredictable, but this is more in line with FY19 actuals than the FY20 budgeted. So again, we identified $1,166,965 in budget drivers. To offset the budget drivers, we identified $694,053 in cost savings. At this time, our charter and school choice numbers are going down almost 64,000. Due to all of the programmatic changes, kids aging out, and the tuitions coming in from Carlisle in the middle school, tuitions are decreasing $514,071. As you know, debt is going down $97,617. And lastly, we reduced our field trip lines by 55% and kept a little in there for virtual field trips. There were not many budget drivers in the new budget versus the old. Here you see the $25,000 for the campus monitor due to the lack of the projected revenue. So for something, I guess, to be a budget driver, it had to be 25,000 or more, not 30. Next is the IT staff budget correction, 25,816. Lastly, we increased our unemployment amount. We do not know if this line will increase, but if so, we can also use the COVID-19 grant money as an offset if we so choose. Again, after reworking every line, we were able to identify $303,675 in cost savings from the new budget versus the old. We reduced contract services across the board, but the biggest savings came from ground maintenance, and we will do more within. We reduced our equipment needs, and we were also able to purchase a maintenance vehicle with FY20 monies, which reduced the FY21 obligation. Overall, the total salaries decreased $132,427 after reworking them. We reduced short-term sublines, and we would fill the needs with existing staff. Lastly, supplies, materials, textbooks were also reduced across the board. There were many changes in the new budget that stayed the same as the requested budget in the winter. The budget for special education tuitions has remained the same, although we have prepaid $260,806 with FY20's surplus. This can potentially reduce this new budget if the committee chooses to do so, and we'll talk about that tomorrow, or they could potentially leave that in for a tougher year that I expect in FY22. OPEB stayed the same, but it is also another area potentially that can be reduced. Debt, early retirement, legal, sick leave, utilities, workers' comp, insurance all stayed the same from the winter's budget. I broke the FTEs into 18 different categories at the high school. This budget includes approximately 208.16 FTEs. Again, some administration, clerical, etc., are split between the two districts, and this does not include the driver's FTEs. This slide compares the FTEs between the old and the new budgets. The increase from the winter's budget is 1.88, and it's all in the teachers category, which was caused mainly by scheduling. But due to attrition, this expense category is less than it was in the winter with the new FTEs added. Overall, total salaries are down $143,989 from the winter's request. So just like at CPS, in addition to general fund, the district receives additional federal and state grants that offset the expenditures. We budgeted $190,000 in salaries to be offset by the METCO and $25,000 this year to be offset by the parking lot revolving account. Again, 2 weeks ago, we learned about the $182 million grant, and we're expecting at this time for the high school an additional $297,000. And this can be used again for the items on this slide.
Just on the parking revenue there, we actually, in conversation with the kids this week, we've realized that we might be better off there back closer to original funding, because now that they're swapping days, we may be able to charge the full amount. The trick is if we have another closure. We did refund money last year when we closed and they were not able to drive to school. So that's the variable there. But if we open and stay open, we could get that back to its normal amount. The kids would actually share parking spots, which I know all of you would probably be interested to hear after all our years of parking. This is an extreme way to deal with the parking issue. I will say that.
And here are our total expected tuitions broken out between non-public and collaborative, and our tuition offsets. Again, our current numbers include the prepaid amount. At this time, we're expecting 35 by the district students. So unlike the Concord public side, the region side is responsible for projecting the revenue. The following list of items is the revenue we receive before we figure out the total assessments to the two towns. At this time, we still have not been given any indication of what the state's budget will look like. That's actually not true. We received on July 31st some very good news. Our Chapter 70 number is actually going to be higher than FY20's amount. And I reduced our Chapter 70 number by $200,000 here, as you can see. Our new number is about $247,000 higher than that. And that's something that I will discuss with the committee about potentially putting back in that could potentially help the budget. In addition, I have not heard anything yet about the Chapter 71 reimbursement. So I did anticipate a reduction there of $125,000. I feel that we can make that up if it actually comes in higher reduction. Our E&D is pretty much maxed out. We are just right under the 5%. So that's really good news. In addition, we recently had our Moody's call, and we are no longer on their watch list, and we are AAA stable. So that's really, really good news there. So we may be able to rework some of these numbers. I left all of the other numbers other than Chapter 70 and Chapter 71 the same. But as we get closer to town meeting, we can maybe refine these numbers.
So Jared, when you say you left them the same, so did you put into your budget and assessment calculation the 2.5 million for Chapter 70 or 2.3?
So I put in, my screen's over here. I should be looking over here, but so I put in 2.5 million. Our new number is actually 2,747,000. So that's 247 more. So to the good.
Okay. So that's hard, right? You're gonna make that adjustment.
That should stick, and that's something that came out, believe it or not, after my budget presentation. So I presented on the 27th, and we got these numbers on the 30th.
Okay, but presumably, so that's 200. You're gonna, our budget is, I guess, overstated by the 200 in terms of net expenses.
Right now, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm just trying.
Depending on what they do with Chapter 71.
Yeah.
But that's certainly a conversation that I will be having with the committee.
Okay. And can I ask again, so as you closed out 2020, what was left?
So we had a very good year. Well, we ended very well. I shouldn't say we had a good year. We ended well.
We didn't have a good year, Jared. Please don't.
It's getting late. So because of the closure, we were able to put back some monies in our revolving accounts. Our circuit breaker, we will be maxed out. So we'll have just over $1 million in there as a potential contingency. Our food service, where we lost about $100,000+, we're now going to have 3 months worth of expenses in there. Our athletic revolving account, we did pay our coaches, which is a general fund expense, but there are offsets, and there's offset in revenue that we did not receive. We were able to put some monies back into the athletic revolving account to get it to where it was to start the year. And we were able to get our E&D from roughly 4% to our max.
And there's no E&D being used in the budget then? Or
there is an amount of, as you can see, the 300,000. But that is actually does not. That is an addition to the 5%.
Right. So you've got 300 in cushion, or 300 in reserve, if you will, in E&D, and you took 300 into the budget.
So we're going to have about 1.5 million in E&D. I should know that number.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Okay. Yeah, that's what I'm trying to figure out. So when you ended 2020, what was the total that you had left over? I understand there was $1 million went into circuit breaker. There's so much that it's left in E&D, so much went into food. And what was the number that was left over?
So I got to zero.
I know you got to zero. Where did you start with?
Oh, so it would, back in March and April, I did project, just under $800,000 or $900,000. That I was in that number held. And that was the number that we were able to put back athletics, put back food service, max out our circuit breaker, and max out our E&D. In addition, and I will get to this, we prepaid the $260 in tuitions and the $351,000 in the laptops.
Okay. So you had a lot left over.
We had a lot left over.
Right. That's what, so I'm trying to figure, so in the FY21 budget, so just like we talked about with CPS, the opportunities for reducing the FY21 budget or carrying it forward to 22, it's how much money is there? So there's $1 million in circuit breaker. there's 300 in E&D, there's 260 in sped that you prepaid, and 351 in laptops that you prepaid. Is that the universe?
So no, it's more, E&D is at 5% of our budget. So it's about 1.5 million.
Oh, okay.
So the 300, so with
okay.
the way that
I'm getting them confused. I see what you're saying.
Yeah. And
so the balance in E&D is $1.5 million. That's pretty healthy.
so the 300,000 is reserved to reduce. So it's actually 1.8 we have in there, but 300 of that is reserved to offset.
Budget.
And I've always said it's not good practice to have E&D as a revenue source.
No, it isn't. Right.
But in our situation right now, we can definitely help out with offsetting the budget.
So, I mean, that's a lot of dough, right?
Yeah, we're in good shape here at the high school.
It looks like it. Yep.
And that is why it was a very sort of quick call with Moody's. We were very confident that we were going to get off their watch list, and they let us know about 24 hours later that we were in fact off their watch list. So we've turned, principals, everybody has done a great job through K through 12, but particularly at the high school to really get know that we needed to get off the watch list. And, the zero-based budgeting has really helped, and we sort of turned it around a little bit. Quite a bit. Great. All right. So the next, I'm almost done.
The assessments.
Here's the assessments.
There we go.
This is going to be sort of confusing, and I'll do my best to explain it. As you know, based on the regional agreement, assessments are dictated by the October 1st enrollment. According to the October 1st enrollment, Concord had 76.1% of this enrollment share, and Carlisle had 23.9%. This was an increase of 0.85% for Concord over FY19's October 1st number. The operating budget does not include debt or transportation. Therefore, we break out the revenue into three sections. First, we have the operating budget, which is the $30,047,548 number you see there. We then reduce that amount by other state and local revenue that I went over on the previous slide. Therefore, underneath the amount to assess the chapters, therefore, the amount to assess above Chapter 70 and local revenue is $27,091,287. Underneath that box, transportation is broken out, and the amount to assess above Chapter 71 reimbursement is $194,787. And lastly, debt is broken out. So here are the new assessments, because we were expecting a drop in state aid by $325,000. This was July 27th. But our budget only dropped $300,847 from the winter's request. Therefore, the $24,153 increase is now reassessed, and assessments went up by this $24,000 amount. The new total assessments has increased $712,155, or 2.68%. Here's the old assessments. You can see that the total assessments were up $688,002, which again is the $24,152 less than they are now because of the state aid. So one of the things that I showed the school committee on the 27th was, here were some examples of, here's what we prepaid in FY20. 260 in special ed tuitions, and the 351,000 in laptops. If we were to go ahead and reduce, I just want to show them what this would look like, the FY21 budget by $611,806. Here is what it would look like. So I wanted to illustrate what assessments would look like if we did offset the new amounts with the FY21 prepayments. I can show any combination of the amounts. But using this example, our total requests would be $912,653 less than FY20's budget, or minus 0.45%. Total assessments would be up $2,732, or 0.01%, with decreased debt service.
Jared, I'm just a little confused. So the amount was in FY20, you paid for this 21, right? You did it.
Correct.
Okay.
So in FY20, we prepaid
Right.
for FY21.
Okay. So the purpose of this pro forma on this page is to show them if you hadn't done it?
This one is now, if we included this reduction in our new budget number, the assessments would now be this compared to.
Why wouldn't we?
I wouldn't.
Don't you have to?
Why
I mean,
wouldn't we?
you already prepaid it, so
Yeah,
don't
why
you have
wouldn't
to?
So one of the things, because what we did is we essentially, starting with the laptops, we prepaid $351,000. That's a fixed cost. So we could keep this $351,000 in the FY21 budget, and essentially prepay FY22s.
Oh, so either.
With the special tuition.
Okay.
And that's the discussion that we'll be having with the committee. But I wanted to show them options. But yeah, that's not something that we would have to reduce technically.
Okay.
So, Jared, can I just summarize, if I could, maybe? I'm always looking at what is the impact going to be to our property tax estimates that we made way back when we did the original guideline. And if I understand it, before including this 611 of prepaid, the assessment to Concord would go up by about $18,000 over what we included, over what the original guideline was. Is that correct? From $20,746,000.
So our initial number that we brought to you back in December was actually under the guideline.
That's right.
By about $150,000.
But what we embedded when we figured out the impact to the property tax was the $7 million. What you have here, the $20,746,322, correct?
Yes, that is your guideline.
Okay, great. And then the revised guideline, I understand. But now you're saying that before we include the 611,000 of prepaids, that number would in fact go up.
And the reason,
20,764,000, if I got that right.
Correct. So the reason for that is because we decreased our general fund budget by $300,000, but due to, at the time, the reduction in Chapter 70 and Chapter 71 was a $24,000 delta, and that had to be reassessed.
So if now that you have better numbers for Chapter 70 and Chapter 71, might that close that $18,000 gap? Do you see where I'm going?
I certainly do. And that is something at our budget workshop tomorrow that we're going to be going through in depth and I'll give the committee a better understanding of that. And again, I did announce it last night at the school committee meeting that Chapter 70 did go, in fact, up. But on the 27th of July, we were not privy to that number yet.
Yeah. Just as an editorial comment, I'll just say that, part of me wants to keep the spending for FY21 in line so that our property tax doesn't go up or stays comfortably under a 3% increase. But another part of me wants to make sure that we're well positioned for FY22. So I understand that you've got a lot of moving parts here still, but I just wanted to put that out there as something that is one of my concerns.
Yeah, no, Mary, I think that's the strategy work and cash flow we're all debating is
exactly.
We soften 21, but do we really struggle in 22 as a result? So
exactly. And I know we're going to be talking about this next on our agenda, but I just thought while you're here, it would be good for you to hear that.
Yep.
You're aware of it. So
we are. We couldn't agree more. And we're glad that we've got some reserves now to have a conversation where we can be part of the discussion and not just coming for asks, but the committee will have options to try to be part of that solution.
Okay.
And that was the goal of both budgets, again, to show the true costs of what we currently have and then give them the options of trying to potentially lower it. And if the 351 and the 260,000 could not be carried forward, then that would have been reduced on this budget. But because it's a occurring cost, that it's something that I just wanted them to make a decision. They 1 out of 21.
Let me understand the laptops for a minute. So you prepaid them, right? So in FY21, you could have no laptop expense at all, right? And then FY22, you'd have to start revving it up again, right? Or
but that number is embedded already in our budget, which is good.
okay.
So it's a fixed cost.
Okay.
It's not an additional 351 that I'd have to come
Good.
up with.
Okay, that's good to know. Thank you.
So the question I guess I'm missing is the Chapter 70 240K that is above and beyond what you had previously estimated. How do you just, cuff that aside? What would be this? Wouldn't it have to just be placed on that line item in the budget? I don't see how it just goes somewhere else. Maybe I'm missing something there.
No, I'd like to talk to the committee about that, but the only reason I would say that you might want to not put all of it is if you think that number is not going to hold. So, which I think it will. But if you think that number is not going to hold, then you want to put a conservative amount.
Well, we're talking about the FY21 budget, and you got notice that the Chapter 70 money, which is a line item in that budget, is a different number.
Right.
Why wouldn't you just use the number that you've been handed? I just don't see how you could just say, oh, we're going to use a different number that's lower just to be conservative because it might not come in. You've been told this is going to come in. I don't see how you don't just put it in there and the district recognizes those savings immediately.
Well, and just to qualify the pace we're on here, we got noticed Thursday night. Jared was on the Cape, and we are here with you Tuesday. Okay. So we're turning stuff around 24 and 48-hour time blocks. So I know for me, the notice felt a little soft because it came as an email to all of us that said Chapter 70 is going to hold. We don't actually have it in the way we normally would formally be noticed that it's a sure thing because there is no state budget. So there's just that little nudge in the back of our head that, yes, we got told, but we didn't get formally noticed of an amount that's a beneficial.
Okay, so it hasn't been chiseled in a piece of granite yet.
Yeah, exactly. It's a soft play number. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. They haven't, it's so fresh that they really haven't had any business meetings with business managers about it yet. So, but I've already run the numbers, and that's something that, again, I'm going to be going over with the committee tomorrow.
Okay. All right. All right. Well, are there any further questions on this budget?
Just a very quick
Sure, Andrea, go ahead.
question. Not being a big numbers person, this isn't directly numbers, but there's a lot of talk and money in the budgets for athletics, coaches, etc. Anywhere in there, is there anything for the arts, music, or has that kind of been put aside?
No, we've held all the numbers that would support those programs. The goal we have, and this will be an ongoing discussion with the coaches, the advisors, and the school committee, we are intending to offer opportunities for kids, even if it's in a very different format. So we haven't cut back on any of the extracurriculars at this point at all. Hoping that one way or another, we've got some way to give kids opportunities for music, art, sports, the whole range, as much of the range as we normally provide, even if it means we're doing it remotely or in very different formats.
Okay, and I don't see any other hands in the air. So thank you so much for joining us from your car, Dr. Hunter. That was really above and beyond. And Jared, thank you for taking us through all of that. And we appreciate both your time and the really over the top efforts that you've all put in to just pull this together in a meaningful way. I mean, this is very hard times we're working through here, and we appreciate all the effort you're putting in. So thank you.
Thank you. And I guess we're back on the 18th, and I'm sure our numbers will keep.
That's a conversation with the public, and you may have a little more firmness on some of the things that we just talked about being a little bit up in the air because the school committee has yet to weigh in on a few more items.
Exactly.
So you may have a little bit more to tell us at that time. So we'll see you then, and the public will have an opportunity to ask their questions and get those answered at the public hearing.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Have
you.
a great night.
Okay, good night. So moving on in our agenda, our next item is our finance director, who's going to take us through what this might mean from a tax impact perspective now that we have a few numbers that we've seen from the school budgets. So Carrie, here we are.
Am I sharing?
You are.
Okay. So I had a lot of fun updating this because it's not really set up to make adjustments mid-course. So what I've done here is up at the top here. Here's your final guideline. I'm not sure if I can make this a little smaller and we can get a few more lines. So your final guideline down here produced about a 2.81% increase to the existing base, resulting in a 3.14% increase to the guidelines portion of the budget. What I have done down here is I've made what I'm calling the pandemic budget. I've made adjustments. And I know some of you were on the select board meeting last night, so you did hear the presentation that the town manager and I made where we went through our revised revenue and revised expenses. We will be here on Thursday night to do that. So I don't necessarily want to get into that this evening. The only adjustment that we made to CPS here was that small adjustment of about, I think, $5,600. We made no adjustment to the district. So obviously you heard a lot from Dr. Hunter and from Jared on proposals that they'll be presenting to the school committee. So we do expect at some point that we'll see some movement in these numbers. But based on the revised revenue, we would be looking at an increase of about 3.36% to the existing base. This takes into account the level funding of Chapter 70 and unrestricted general government aid. It takes into account significant reductions in local receipts. It also takes into account the permanent financing of the middle school feasibility study, which was not included or not contemplated when you put your guideline together. And it also takes into account a reduction in new growth.
So Carrie, just to sort of package that set of things up, those are part of the revised town budget that we expect to hear on Thursday.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes,
All right,
it
thanks.
is.
One thing you might be able to try, Carrie, on the very far right-hand side of the we'll call it the menu strip at the top, there's a little up arrow. I think if you click that, it'll collapse that, and we might be able to see a few more lines of your. There you go, perfect. And So that we can see a few more lines.
Okay, all right. Okay.
So Carrie, I need to get grounded on this again. So our original guideline budget showed a 2.81% property tax increase. Now, how did we get from there to the 3.36? So you reduced CPS by the small amount, right? And then for the district, the high school, you put in the guideline budget?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
I think the easiest way to talk about it really without getting into all of the adjustments that we've made is there is a net decrease in other sources revenue, other, non-property tax revenue of about $1.5 million. So because we haven't changed the district assessment, we essentially haven't changed CPS. We have made changes on the town side, but
So that 3.36 includes changes on the town side?
Yes, it does.
So far the town has stepped up to actually decrease their spending to make up for some of the revenue shortfall. But this particular model right now doesn't show the schools coming in any less than $5,000. Is that correct? Than the guideline budget?
Right. So we had talked early on that our estimated revenue loss would probably be in the $2.5 to $3 million range.
That's right.
And so now we're down to about 1.5 million.
I thought it was 1.8. Why
1.8, and then we made some additional adjustments to the non-guidelines that brought it down to about 1.5. So
but I'm still confused. Why is property tax going up so high by so much if the town has in fact found the shortfall? And maybe this is premature. Maybe we should wait until we hear from the town and then go through this.
I do think it is somewhat premature because we do have a full presentation. I mean, I guess all I can say is the town has closed about half the gap of the lost revenue.
And that leaves us at the 3.36.
Right. I think so.
And so,
right. But it also doesn't reflect the 300,000 that the schools gave back, right?
It doesn't reflect anything on the school side aside from that very small adjustment, because this was the first time that I have heard their presentation.
Yeah.
And actually the 300,000.
Where are you referring to the 3.36? I'm sorry.
The right over here.
It's in column I.
Thank you.
It's a percent. Yeah.
Yep, I see it. Okay, thank you.
So until we make some additional adjustments on the expenditure side, the property tax increase needs to go up to balance the budget. Now, I expect, based on what I heard this evening, that we'll at least get back to the guideline percent increase of 2.81, if not lower.
I didn't hear that.
I didn't hear that from CPS. I heard we would have a potential benefit from the district.
And it was small. It was
small. It was like $5,000. I mean,
right.
and then but then they have these things flapping around, 240,000.
Yeah.
So
well, there's the high school budget is down. We don't get all of that. We get 75% of it, but that was down 300,000, right?
Right.
Yeah,
but
that's
there's
not
so many.
The assessment wasn't down. I don't,
No, the assessment wasn't down. The assessment. Bottom line, the assessment was up by $18,000.
And that was probably because we got hammered with a 0.85% increase in our share, and that's why our assessment went up.
There are so many moving parts here.
Yeah, I have to understand that. Yeah.
The assessment before that $611,000 of prepaids is applied, and before they increased the Chapter 70, our assessment went up by $18,000 over our original guideline.
Right.
That is a fact. So this particular thing that we're calculating here, that 3.36 is actually low because we don't reflect in this the $18,000 increase with the budget that we just heard. But there are still a lot of moving parts. I don't know what you think, Dean, but I think, hearing from the town would be good. But there's going to be so many things moving on this, and there's going to be so many decisions made that maybe we want to recommend a property tax increase that we would feel comfortable with while all these other conversations are going on around us, because we're not going to be at every one to find out what is the bottom line impact on property tax. I don't know how you want to handle that.
We've almost abrogated our guideline function here at this point because we're in this high-speed chase to just,
Right.
close up these budgets. And we need to find a way to understand what, as all these gears are meshing, what are they doing to the taxpayer? I mean, fundamentally, that's what we're,
I agree. Yep.
what we're about.
So there's a lot of decisions still to be made. I mean, even the school obviously has some big decisions to make about that $600,000 for one. And it's a balancing act because, like I said earlier, yes, we want to keep this year's property tax increase. I was hoping it would be with around 3% personally, because I was hoping it would be any more than 3%. We are facing an economic recession after all.
The negative impacts on the citizens are substantial, on businesses, on working people. They are substantial. The latest Massachusetts information, which was June employment, showed Concord at 9.8 unemployment, and another 8%, another 11% who have left the workforce. So, we're up in the 20%, fewer people working in Concord than were working in February. So there are substantial impacts that we need to be cognizant of. That's absolutely the case.
You're right. We don't really have a guideline process to use as a conversation. So I don't know.
Dean, can I ask a question?
Sure.
So I didn't want to raise it during the discussion, but the revolving funds that the school committee talked about, the 400,000 or whatever from CARES Act plus a couple $100,000.
Yes.
So that money, I thought I heard them say it's incoming revenue. They're planning on spending it all. So they're not going to include it in either the budget or the revenue side of things. Did I hear that correctly?
Yes, you did.
So my question is, Carrie, would you still incorporate it into your table here? That's sort of question number one. And then to the extent that they're planning or recommending to the school committee that they're going to hold, a lot of the 400,000 quote unquote in reserve. I'm wondering why not show that as revenue, which means in essence, there's less of a hit to the taxpayers. It's almost $500,000.
It is.
Is this a stupid question?
Well, no, it's not. I think that the way Jared expressed that was that he also has potential expenses or really anticipated expenses that he has not brought into the expense lines of the budget either. And so he's kind of like playing this secondary game of, this is kind of a grant, and I'm trying to fill up the grant. What can I acquire that is grant eligible? And I'll just throw that in that pot and keep it like on a side table somewhere. That's the way it sounded to me. Now, I'm not trying to make it into a pejorative sense. I'm not. I feel as though he's doing the most responsible job he can do, but it's a little less than transparent. Let's put it that way.
And I guess, my feeling is also, having closely followed what's going on with stimulus money as part of my day job, that the 400,000 or whatever was money for past expenses, maybe some ongoing, but frankly, if it's going to get worse, we're going to see another round or two later this year, if not later this year, early next spring. I mean, it's just a fact. And I guess it's a little bit irresponsible is the wrong word probably, but it's probably better to return the money to the town, if you will, and then sort of come back for more money if necessary. And more money will be available from the federal government in any case.
What do you mean by return to the town? Sorry, it can't be. It's not for revenue for the town, right?
No.
It's not fully fungible. You can't just apply it anywhere.
The property tax.
It has to. But
I think
it may.
I understand it's not fully fungible, but they could use the money to offset whatever they're planning to spend for 21 is my point. Instead of spending the money.
They could.
Lots of qualifying expenses they can offset.
And that means the $400,000 less in taxes we have to raise for the schools.
It's absolutely true.
That's right.
That's all.
So I think the issue really just is timing. Jared mentioned that they presented to the school committee last Monday. Last Thursday, we heard information from the state on what they were going to do with the major state aid categories. He got some information about CARES Act funding that would be available to the school. They're here in front of the finance committee before they've even gone back to the school committee. So, I mean, what I heard him say was he presented a bunch of ideas that I think they'll take back to the school committee and see how the school committee feels about them before they can commit to some of these changes.
Dean, can I make a recommendation? I'm just going to throw this out there, right? I know we usually have a guideline process. This year we couldn't because of what happened, but maybe this might be a good time for us to just have the opinion of the finance committee be published, through word of mouth or through Carrie or whatever, to the people as they're making these trade-off decisions as far as what kind of a property tax increase we would feel is equitable this year. I throw that out there as an idea because
I think during our guidelines process that we did execute on with old budgets that are not the new budgets, we came to a point where we were looking at our sustainable rate and saying to get anywhere near our sustainable rate, we're going to take a 3-year, slope to try to get there. And we kind of pegged ourselves at whatever the 3.0 that we were like, okay, that's
no, I'm not talking about the guideline percent. I'm talking about the bottom line impact to the taxpayer.
I understand. And what I think we need to do is just sort of stick to our guns is the way I feel. Is that if that sustainable rate is not something that we're committed to, then this thing just floats up. I mean, this
is a very unusual year. I personally feel that bringing the sustainable growth rate into the conversation now will muddy the waters because the sustainable growth rate, as you know, is very, very low right now.
Yes.
The benchmark that I have in my head is that I expected property taxes to go up comfortably under 3% when we published our guideline. And then we find out we have a revenue shortfall. And then we find out we saved some money in FY20. And so we've got all these moving parts. So now where do we want all of the pieces to land when we've still got some decisions to make as far as how much of this do we want to save, use in FY21? How much do we want to defer to FY22? So I'm more thinking now that the guideline to give them would be, we're hoping that the property tax hits this, and you can tie that to the SGR if you want to, which we said was well, actually we didn't. The SGR was 2.16.
Well, we had identified a multi-year trajectory to get to the SGR. So that's why we were at sort of a 3.0, I think, or something like that last year.
We were at 3.25.
3.25.
It was a glide path. So that was a glide path. Ryan's words, yes, to get down to, yes.
Now, Carrie's just added, while we've been talking, what it would mean to get down to 3%, Mary.
Yeah.
And
Oh,
it
thank
shows,
you. I'm not paying attention.
and it is an additional reduction of $310,000.
We can do that.
Yeah, we got, well,
Yep.
can we? I mean,
I heard 247. We're getting 247 more from Chapter 70.
They have
I was
millions
just saying,
of dollars in
the
reserves.
region has a fair amount of flexibility. I hadn't seen anything now there's no revenue side, so to speak, in the K through 8 system. They don't have options where they look at different forms of revenue. We can take stuff from E&D. We can cuff this aside for the future. They don't have those kinds of pieces
the high
in their
school.
budget.
Yes,
But they have them at the high school.
they do.
But they do, and they seem to have, it's almost like they printed money in 2020. It's impressive how they filled up their E&D where they were on thin ice, and now it's full.
Yeah, they're doing a good job.
They're doing a good job.
They are
doing a good job. But CPS is an expense-only budget, and I don't know that I'd have to look more closely, but I don't think that the regional expense side of the budget that there were huge savings in there. Maybe I'm missing something, but I didn't see on the expense side that they were saving a ton of money.
I thought they were saving 300,000.
Was it 300? Was that 300,000?
Yeah,
Yes,
they
right.
1,000 less. Yeah.
Yeah, but by the time it all trickles down,
Somehow that became a plus.
Well, we have that 0.85%.
Right. But they have a lot of cushions that they can draw on. So I
think we can do it, and I
absolutely think you can do it.
Well, if they would have to find somewhere in the vicinity of 400 to 425,000 at the region in order for us to benefit close to 300, because it's a 75% share.
Okay, some of it they've got from Chapter 70. Some they've got the 611,000 they had for prepaids. I think, and they're not. Anyway.
They have $1.5 million in E&D.
And they have $1.5 million in E&D.
They have $1.5 million in E&D, Dean.
Yeah, I know. They
have it.
Yes, I understand. And they have 300,000 that they literally cannot put into E&D, and so they're going to expend.
Otherwise, it would come back to us.
The expense, because they can't put it there.
Right. If all these things that they funded, like food and athletics,
right,
that if that money was not funded, it would have come back to the town, right?
Yes, it would.
Yes. So it's I think it's there.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering, Mary and Dean and others, to your point, Mary, is it worth maybe for Dean on the behalf of the finance committee to shoot off at least maybe an email to the school committee saying, hey, we heard the presentation, and given where things are with the presentation and our view of the overall picture, we really urge you to consider, in essence, taking the CARES money and using it to offset your existing budget and not plan on spending it for additional spending. $400,000, we can ask them to, in essence, save the town taxpayers.
We could do that, or we could just ask them to come to a number however they want to get that number.
Right.
But
well, you really have two different administrations. You have one where we're working cooperatively with Carlisle, and the other where it's just all us. But I'm not discounting the thought. I think the thought is very sound that the school committees sharpen their pencils a little bit around some of these large numbers that could be returned to the taxpayer.
Yeah. Yeah, Dean, you make a good point. They have money at CPS as well, right? They have
mostly they have the CARES money.
Yeah, they have CARES money, and they still have 300,000 in E&D there. So
no, they don't. The CPS doesn't have E&D. It's not a thing.
What am I thinking of? Where did I come from? Maybe I wrote it on the wrong page then. But they have 297 in CARES, right?
That's at the high school.
Oh, that's at the high school. I must have written on the wrong.
They had money for CARES at the.
They have 468 in CARES at CPS.
Sorry, I'm confused.
Yeah, And we
Doesn't that has to be spent on for that specific purpose, right?
Yes, it does.
Yes, it
And
does.
so it has to be accounted for.
Yes.
So how can it be?
Because they
given
might have
to the
spent that much
town?
money on stuff in 2020 that they could apply it back for. So there is a way for them to access it, Dee. Yeah, but they have
There's a way
600,000.
for them to get it, to apply it. Because I expect that some percentage of the things that they have budgeted includes new software. Like they went through a whole laundry list of budget drivers that include, we're buying new software to support remote learning, we're doing this, we're doing that. So there are things, whether they can add them all up, and Jared said he'll be presenting maybe tomorrow night at the school committee.
No, they have a workshop tomorrow, but they also have 600,000 in circuit breaker that they put in, right?
Yeah.
So they have 600,000 in circuit breaker, 150,000 in earmark contingency, and then 468 in CARES. So they have about 1.2 million to play with just at CPS without involving Carlisle at all.
Yeah. So I think Parashar had a great idea to send the school committee a memo, Dean. I would second that idea, that saying that because of revenue shortfalls and because of the economic recession, we're trying to keep property taxes reasonable. The town has already stepped up, and we're expecting something like that.
We haven't seen that presentation yet, but just the line item that we just saw on Carrie's spreadsheet.
That's right. But still, you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think that's a great idea. I think.
I certainly can do it. Do I need a vote for the committee to vote to tell me to write such a letter?
I'm going to make a motion.
I'll make a motion that Dean send a letter on behalf of the town. And I would just simply ask that we put in a minimum amount that we're looking for rather than leaving it up to them. So in essence, the 300 or 310 that Carrie was putting in to get to 3%, maybe that's a starting point. But I make a motion that Dean send an email or a letter tomorrow before the school committee meets so that they've got that to consider.
Second.
Okay. I just want to clarify. Parashar, did you say town? I thought you said town instead of. Clarify that to what your statement.
For the school committee.
Well, there's actually two committees. One's for the region and one's
for the Concord schools, Concord Public Schools, right? Not the region.
Not the region.
Both.
Okay, see, this is what we need to crisp. I can write any kind of letter. It's fine.
Let's clarify.
Well, I guess my thought is it's a clean way to do it without getting into Carlisle. Is to do it from the schools. I'm open to doing it for both, but at the end of the day, we're looking for 310,000, I think,
right,
from both combined for us to get to 3%.
So,
yes.
Okay.
I think it should be up to the school committee to decide what bucket they want to take it from, but they'd have to work with Carrie to figure out how they get to the 300, because you need to do some interesting math to show, how it works. And Jared wouldn't know how to do that. But if they work with Carrie, I think they could they could work it out.
That's fine.
It might be easier to take it out of the high school. And I don't think Carlisle would mind.
Carlisle
would like it. I'm sure.
No, their finance committee and their select board specifically called people in and said, we want to see 5% reductions across the board in all these budgets.
Right.
So they've had a very crisp conversation with each departmental director in the town.
So we leave it up to them.
Starting with Parashar, what is your motion?
Make a motion for Dean to send a letter to the school committee on behalf of the finance committee, asking them to come in $310,000 less combined. At least 310,000 less combined than the presentation that we saw today, so that at the end of the day, the town's tax rate doesn't increase by more than 3%. I mean, that would be the rationale, but the number they got to be looking for is 310 or more in savings.
In FY21.
Carrie,
it's correct, in FY21. Yeah. And I still think that leaves them. Oh, I need a second on that motion. Who's seconding that? Mary, you second?
Yep.
Okay. I think that still leaves them with a lot of play. They have a lot of ways to get to that. That's the thing. So, you know, and you know, there's so.
So you're planning to send it?
Is there further discussion on this? Do we
Further discussion. You're planning to send it to both CPS and the region?
I would do that, yes.
Yeah.
Is there anything that can change with the presentation from the town that would alter that letter? Because we haven't seen that yet. Just curious.
She had it built in. I think, Carrie, don't you have it built into your spreadsheet?
I have what we are currently proposing built into the spreadsheet.
So what we would see, what
1.5.
we expect to see on Thursday night is fundamentally built in a summary way into your spreadsheet. Is that a way of
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
At the 1.5, Carrie?
Yes.
Okay. Further discussion on the letter that I am being tasked to write.
Yes, I think that given the environment and all the unknowns, we have to be careful in the wording. We don't want to beat on the schools too hard. This is a sensitive topic in a town that holds its schools as maybe a top priority. And you know, if you listen to the national news, there's a lot going back and forth about whether or not schools should reopen, the amount of protection they need to give the students and the teachers, and that all costs money. And this isn't just the schools either. I see this, I'm seeing this across business. There are a lot of unknowns right now, you know, up to the point of another possible, you know, further shutdowns. So let's not be too harsh, and let's bear in mind that the school doesn't really know yet just what it's going to have to deal with.
Dick, I agree. I'm not disputing that at all. It just seems the way things were presented, they presented a plan which was sound for fiscal year 21 that had made all the adjustments to get them to where they thought they were reasonably well, knowing that anything can happen, but they had this money set aside or on the side and they hadn't figured out what to do with it. And so it sounds like it adds up to more than $1 million. And I think all we're suggesting is, hey, spend the $1 million, but don't spend all the $1 million. Send 300,000 back. And then, of course, as I said, you know, later, if something were to change, they can always come back to the town. And I'm confident the federal government's going to pipe in with more stimulus funding if things take a turn for the worse, particularly after November, frankly.
Yes.
Yeah. And I hope with all my heart that you're right, Parashar.
Believe me, we're following it for the company. We're following what's going on right now, hour by hour in Washington, right?
Yeah.
So we're hearing 5 and 6 will come if things get a lot worse.
Yes. Well, I'll say you have much more faith in Washington than I have.
I've been losing it daily, by the way.
But taking your advice, I will be careful to write the letter with my velvet glove.
Thank you.
The best I can.
We know that they're going into a meeting tomorrow to have a discussion about these
Yeah,
very.
so we just want to put our thoughts in front of them.
Yeah, the budget. So I think we're
I
simply.
agree with Dick.
Hey,
No, I'll be up till midnight tonight if we don't close this meeting
That's
out.
why we
writing
did
a letter. So let's, can we get this to a vote? So because I think I know I have to write a letter. Greg.
Yeah, I just got one more question. Carrie, could you say what the, can you go back and refresh what the number is with, you know, adding back in that 310, it was what,
336 or something?
336. And what would that per thousand cost the average taxpayer? The
I can't really do that in my head. Let me just work on it and I'll see if I can get an answer to you.
Well, the average tax bill is what, 12,000 something?
No.
Yeah,
I think it's
Right around that, right? Yeah.
I'll have to go back and look at it at this time of year with all of the numbers going. But let me.
It's about $360.
$360.
Well, I did really round.
Really rough math. Is
really rough math. On my my piece of junk calculator.
Thank you.
Okay, so now we need a, whoops, what have I done? Okay, there we go. We need a vote on this, I think. So I'm going to go around my screen and call everyone out.
So can I just, what's the amount of money you're putting in there?
I'm going to be stating two numbers. Our desire to keep the tax rate from not rising more than 3%.
Okay.
Okay. And
Yeah.
to achieve that, we believe that the town has made a significant, contribution to trying to keep that down, and that the schools need to find or look for about between the two districts a composite benefit to the town of Concord of $310,000 or more.
And we don't know, so the 300,000, is that the hit to them, or is it a different number that's the hit to their budget?
So that's the hit to them.
That's the hit to them.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
So the 300,000 that they already cut, which somehow resulted in an increase. I don't know how that works, but because that's what they're probably scratching their head themselves going, how does that happen? But anyway, we'd be asking them to double it in order to get the number down.
Well,
Yeah,
because CPS could come up with the 300,000 and leave CCRSD alone.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
No.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
it's a blend. It could be a blend.
On the side,
It could be-
Christine,
Because we have a unified superintendent and administration across the two districts, I think it is possible for them to work those two things together and make it work, and find a
We'll ask
blend.
them. They can tell us what they think.
Yeah, they can tell us what they think.
well, and correct me if I'm wrong, though, it doesn't necessarily mean they've got to cut, because they've got that money sitting on the side,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
That they can take and sort of give back, if you will, and still spend some of that and still see an increase.
Right.
So it's
They don't
not-
have to prepay. They don't have to prepay laptops.
Well, they can figure out how to do it.
That's
of
right.
ways.
That's right.
They could have a year with no laptops since they
That's
already
another way.
prepaid them. Your point, Dee.
I mean, I don't think it's our job to try to get into their business
Yes,
at
I agree.
that level.
You're right.
But there are things they can do, I'm sure. So it's their job to do that.
So we're straight on the 310, that will get down to the 3% increase?
Based on the calculations that Carrie's presented to us, yes.
Carrie, are you comfortable with that, or do you want to check them or anything before we do this?
No, I'm
Comfortable. Okay, good.
that we will get to about 3%.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say it's exactly 3%.
That's all right. We're doing the best we
Model
can.
is producing a
Yeah.
3%.
Okay, good.
So. Okay, so we need a vote, and let's take a vote. And this is for all in favor of having me write a letter with two numbers in it. One, we're trying to achieve an overall tax increase of 3% or less for the town of Concord, and that between the two districts, we're looking for them to find a savings of around $310,000 or more to arrive at the tax increase that we would feel okay with. That's the letter that I'm intending to write. And so, Ms. Reynolds, how do you vote?
I vote yes.
Okay, and Dean Banfield, I vote yes. Ms. Ortner,
Yes.
Mr. Swain,
Yes.
Ms. Hartman,
Yes.
Mr. Jameson,
Yes.
Mr. Patel,
Yes.
Mr. Rubenstein,
Yes.
Ms. Zoll,
Yes.
Mr. Hickling,
Yes.
Ariella, you're muted.
Yes.
Okay, it's unanimous. I will be writing a letter. Okay, thank you. I'm looking forward to all this extra.
Do you want to go home now,
Okay.
Dee?
Yeah, exactly. I think I should leave the meeting so I can go propose a letter. But we are on to the next item in our thing, which is the chair's remarks, and I have a few. One of which was taken by the school committee already. I wanted to just mention that they're looking at this early retirement program, and that's a piece of their puzzle that is still another moving piece for them. So that was part of my chair's remark. I did want to commend to your attention the select board meeting that was held yesterday. They had an extensive second session of a public hearing regarding the library, the agreement between the community and the library. And in my view, it is really just a sparkling example of how beneficial it is to have a public hearing about things like that. There was a lot of feedback from the community. The select board took a lot of it in. They amended the memorandum of understanding that would exist between the library corporation and the town based on the public feedback. So the public hearing itself, I felt, was just something that is, it's really a valuable tool, and it is something that should, move the needle when it needs to be moved. And in this particular case, it did. I know that public hearings in some contexts are like little rubber stamps, so they take 10 minutes and you're out of there. But in this particular case, it was it just blossomed into a very robust set of changes that have occurred in that memorandum of understanding between those two entities. So that is, I just commend that to your attention. I wanted to bring back to your attention that the climate action plan is available, and it does, and Mary mentioned this in our last meeting, it does have significant financial components in it that are going to affect us if we take it up with a full earnestness. Electrification of the town's community buildings, electrification of its transportation fleet, all of its vehicles to the degree that it is possible. These are going to be very expensive costs to the town to execute on the climate action plan. So it's worth taking a look at that. And I wanted to just mention, in the context of a meeting, I sent it out via email, and you have the links for both the climate action plan review and also this. The 229 Main Street are conducting a survey, and they would love to get feedback on how to use that land. And they just haven't had as much community feedback as they would like to have under their belt before they really finalize what they're doing there. So do take a moment, go back to the email I sent and fill that out. I forwarded it around, and it was in the Concord Journal this week, the Estabrook Woods agreement that the judge ruled, it was an agreement, but the judge issued a ruling that has opened that trail. So that, we've spent a lot of time talking about the legal expense, but this is actually a result, and it's only temporary, and it is going to lead to a final result, which is unknown at this point, but at least the town it has been ruled to be not a trivial case. So it is not a trivial suit at all. So that's not, that we're not at risk of having the expenses of the defendants boomerang back on the community, because it was ruled by the judge to be not trivial. So that's a financial risk taken off the table. So that's good. And the community can walk on it at least until the final ruling. So that's good. This is just this is a personal note. I intend to write a personal letter, not from the committee, but from myself, that I think that the select board needs to go back and take a look at the parking plan that was developed by the Estabrook Woods Study Committee, because they had a very elaborate study of where all the cars are parked. Because if this is finally identified as a public way for the community, the town's going to have to take seriously the concerns of the neighbors who live on Estabrook Road regarding the management of parking for that entrance point. So there was a very elaborate plan, and other neighbors on Monument Street have pushed back and said, no, we don't want to execute on the plan that was developed for parking, down near Punkatassett. Please keep them out on the road. It's the most dangerous parking I can possibly imagine. So I will be personally writing a letter under my name to please revisit the parking plan now that we have made some progress towards that suit. So that's I am off my soapbox. I'll stand down. Okay. So the final piece of my chair's remarks tonight is a sub piece, which is trying to get the Finance Committee report pulled together. And there's a few pieces of this that, we need to, come together on. There's others that can just fall out once these budgets are somewhat finalized after the hearings. We can just quickly, write the school committee piece with get all the right numbers into the paragraphs that have to do with the school budgets and stuff. And the town piece can also fall in once we have those budgets finalized, because those have to be recast. But we do have to pull together a few other elements, our 5-year tax plan, and this will be the first year where we're actually putting the SGR somewhere in the thing. So I distributed a draft statement that I would put in the report, and I'm just looking for feedback. If anybody has any comments, I'm open, because I'm just trying to kind of start checking boxes as to how to get this Finance Committee report, final elements of it pulled together, so that they're ready. We have to be done by the 24th of August, and that is not far away. So, Mary.
Can I make a quick addition to this SGR right up here? I'd like to add on the second to last paragraph, when you're saying what it's going to be used for, you say multi-year future impacts such as collective bargaining agreements, service contracts, equipment leases, and I would add the timing and the magnitude of capital expenditures.
Okay, that's a good thought. That's a fine addition. Anybody else with comments? This is Dee.
I just have one thing that I'd like you to consider. It's in paragraph 4. It's the last sentence. And I'd like you to consider deleting it. It's
okay.
At times of even modest inflationary pressure, and it goes on.
Yeah.
I don't think it fits with what you're saying in that paragraph.
Okay. I thought about that, and I
just consider it.
I've had other feedback of the same nature, but let me just try to defend it, and then we can. I'm happy to take your comment, and we may end up deleting it. I feel as though that the whole nature of this thing is to provide some formal level of planning guidance. That we as the town does things, it needs to try to be anticipatory of what the future might hold, and the Finance Committee is trying to, throw out some information. Let's put it that way. And it seems likely to me that we will not be in these low inflationary times forever, and that when you've pumped this much money into the economy, eventually there's going to be inflationary pressure, because there's just so much money floating around. Mm-hmm. I just don't see how that's not going to create inflationary pressure. That's neither here nor there. We don't see it yet. It isn't there now. But if we get into an inflationary state, which is beyond 2.5, which is the state level maximum, which requires overrides, it is likely that we will end up saying that to sustain the character of our community, to keep our employees, properly employed and pay them, a reasonably decent salary and keep it in line with inflation, et cetera, we may need to see that our SGR is above 2.5%. So I'm just trying to toss it out there so people understand that this is not just, it's not just the finance committee trying to get a lid on taxes. Like taxes are just too damn high. We're just a bunch of curmudgeons who are just trying to keep you from, having what you want. No, we're trying to keep things in line with what incomes are doing and what the cost of running the town ought to be, that kind of thing. I guess it seems like a reasonable statement, but I'm happy to take it out. If you think it's just a distraction, and I'm happy to take it out. Anybody else got a comment on that? I've now defended it to the best of my ability.
I kind of see Dee's point that it does kind of seem to be all of a sudden a break in the paragraph. But based on what you just said, I think if you made a better transition into what you just said, which is the SGR can in fact be higher than this arbitrary thing called Proposition 2.5.
Right.
The way you said it, I thought just now. It's abrupt in the write-up, but the way you said it right now, it makes sense to me that you're saying that the SGR isn't just always going to be really low and keep spending down, down, down. It's going to march with inflation.
That could be the topic of the next year when it does go up higher.
Okay.
I'm just, I think that you're trying to just explain to them what the SDR is.
Maybe we introduce that problem space when we actually face it, rather than preemptively just saying, "Oh yeah, by the way, it might happen." Okay, I will take it out. It's fine with me. I'll take it out. Any other comments on the write-up for the SGR? Things I did not put in the SGR.
I think it was a really good piece. I really like it. I think it was well constructed and informative, and to the point.
Yeah, the things I didn't do. I did not put a graph. I did not put a dwelling on how much taxes have gone up in the past, and that this is an attempt to rein that in. I didn't get into any of that. I just said this is what this is for. This is to try to plan for the future. So it was not a big Randall curve exposition. It was just.
And you didn't talk about how we calculated it, which
I didn't talk about how.
Really, stay away from that.
Yeah. So, and to that point, go ahead, Chris.
I was just going to say, I don't know if you wanted to, in the language, in the guidelines letter. So what I did, and there I had to kind of spell out how we calculated. But
it's a footnote. It has to be.
I did it in the footnote, right?
Yeah.
But what I referred to it as, which is how I think of it, to me, it's a benchmark that we use and we're going to use. That really is tied to the growth in inflation. You can use other factors if you want. We just happen, we picked, current and future inflation factors, but it's a benchmark. It's one of a number of factors we're going to look at when we look at the long-term rate of growth of taxes in the town. And that's good. That's a good thing for us to do, right? Instead of being, just being, hey, everybody wants 4% for payroll increases. We've said, wait a minute. Yep. Yes, we understand we have to look at the local level, at the micro level in terms of what's going on, but we're also going to back up a little bit and say, well, what's happening with the rest of the economy? One measure of that we're using is inflation. And it's just, it's a benchmark for us, right? It's not prescriptive in my opinion.
No, it's not.
Right. So those are, if you can look at that language there, but that's why that's what I called it in that letter to the school committee in the town.
I'll take a look, see if there's anything I can borrow, Chris. So that's a fine suggestion.
Just an idea.
Yeah.
And I have one more comment about this thing. When we're on this paragraph where you say that you could possibly take into account other factors such as population demographic shifts in the community. Don't we take that into account when we're developing the guideline?
Yes. Just to try to defend that line, which I think I need to do, because we don't use those factors when we calculate it now.
Right, we don't.
Is that the way this is structured is we meet in July, each year. At least that's the pattern that we're sort of settling into. It is nothing is cast in stone here, but we meet in July, and that's the outset of the budget cycle. And we talk about and set the next year's SGR. I think that it's like having a constitutional convention. We could reset how we calculate it or what it is. When Chris brought it up this year, she said it's 0.69%. That seems kind of low. Do we want to kind of bring it up so it's more in line with something that might have a realistic feel to it? We all said no. Let's just go with the straight calculation. But it's a real debate. It's a real conversation, and we could have moved it up. So it is our call what it is. Another reason why I didn't put a calculation in the description of it, because every year we could decide, oh, we want to temper it and just move it a little because we think that's a better look. Maybe 1% is a better look, or 1.5% is better because it seems like something somebody could take into account as opposed to 0.69 where they just laugh it off and go, oh, we're going to do that. So, so I think that it sort of goes to the fact that we will have an annual conversation, and that anything could be thrown into that conversation as a reasoned argument for how we adjust it or how it is calculated. So that's why I threw those in.
Okay, I just want to say
again, I can take them out.
When Chris said that she looks at the SGR as a benchmark as far as what's happening with inflation. So it's just one number that we put in a mix, and we kind of massage that to get to the guideline. That's how I did it.
The guideline is distinct in my view as a one-year one-off. We're trying to do this year. And this thing is a multi-year. If somebody from NESDEC comes back and says, we see the following population shifts in the school population, like it's going up, on a steep slope, they're going to be adding 50 kids a year for the next 3 years.
Okay.
That might cause us to say, gee, to be sustainable, we're going to need a little more money in this. We're going to need a little more oomph in the budget to support these kids.
Okay.
So it's just
keep the word possibly in there.
Yeah. Okay. There's a lot of. Yes. Andrea.
I think that you worded it very well. This is something that we want people to read and relate to. Not everybody needs all the numbers and the graphs and so forth. I think that this reads well, and it's a statement that that somebody might actually read.
Well, thank you. Okay, glad to hear that. I'm hopeful that somebody will read it at some point. That's the point. Okay,
Good.
I have some suggestions. I will mash it up a little, but I think we're getting to a conclusion on that one.
Yeah, we're tired.
Thank you for your input, and I'll take all of that in and see what I come back with. What else is left on my agenda tonight? We have observer reports. Are there any observer reports? We've been sort of falling off the rails, I think. Oh, Mary, maybe you can give us an update on how you're doing at filling your observer roles for the coming cycle, because we're kind of in the coming cycle and we might want to.
Is Carrie still on the call? Carrie's still there. I think I've got back things from everyone. Well, I think Wade, we're still waiting to hear from you, right? And Carrie, you have the list. I know you and I went over that.
Yeah, I'm just maneuvering my way there.
Yeah, we've gotten some really good inputs from most people. There's no big conflicts as far as what people want. I'm not sure everybody's going to get their first choice, but that never
do you have any actual holes where there's like, okay, nobody volunteered for this and it's kind of important?
Well, we have some holes.
You want me to put it up on the screen?
That would be great.
Okay.
Thank you.
Are you seeing it?
We are.
Okay.
We have no one for the Board of Assessors yet, but I think that's okay. We have no one for the Audit Advisory Committee. We have no one for the, yes, we do. This is hard to read.
So
Thank you, Terry. That helps. I think the best thing to do right now would be to can we send this back out?
we can, yep.
Let's send this back out. And then the people who haven't gotten back to us yet will see where there are some holes, and hopefully they'll be willing to step up to some of those.
Did I get assigned already?
No, you
to
didn't.
the Economic Vitality Committee?
No, is that what you want?
I thought I got something.
Andrea.
So
I can't see it.
Andrea, that's your first choice, but that's not, but we haven't assigned things yet because I have to wait.
Oh, okay. I was going to go to the meeting.
Let's just say it's a high probability.
I thought I got an email saying.
The takeaway here is that there are 21 assignments, not including the ones listed as other, and there are only 15 of us.
So that you're going to have to double up.
Some of us have to double up.
So,
some of those are once a month type of things. So,
and some of them are easy. But anyway, Carrie, let's send that out again. So, and then the people who haven't signed up yet can see where there are some holes, and hopefully we'll fill some of those holes. And then the next time we meet, we'll give an update. Is that okay, Carrie?
Yep, I'm doing it right now.
Thank you.
Okay, so if anyone has observer reports, we can hear them now. Who would like to just raise your hand? Okay, is that John? You have an observer report?
John had a mosquito.
No.
Sorry, nothing to report.
Andrea, you have an observer. Did you go to your? No.
I was all set and sitting and waiting for the Council on Aging Zoom meeting to start for 20 minutes. And then this was the third time trying to schedule it. And because of technical difficulties, it shut down and has to be rescheduled.
Okay.
If you don't give me your preferences, you're going to get the Council on Aging.
That was my second.
That's great.
I got that.
All right. I think we've heard all we need to hear from the school committee right now. The only other piece that I think is going on with them is that they were looking at the early retirement program, and Dr. Hunter described that as a 1-week opportunity.
Right. She did give out the information in terms of what additional incentive. It was like $40,000 to be paid out over 3 years. That was at one of the meetings a couple days ago.
Yeah.
And I think the other, I'm glad that the questions came up about the laptops or the iPads, because there was a lot of discussion about that with the committee, the school committee. And one of the points that one member, Court Booth, made was, yes, you've based the idea of getting the laptops because of the continuity or the familiarity that the tech people have at the schools.
Right.
But what about the children? What about from the viewpoint of kids? Are they better off with that type of equipment or with the iPad?
Right.
Kids will deal with anything with a screen in front of them. I can so attest to that. Don't worry about that.
I thought it was just an interesting perspective that he was bringing up.
Yeah.
Because that wasn't one that was discussed during the conversation about the equipment they had been using. I think, though, from the standpoint of how it fits in better with 8th graders leaving and then moving that equipment back down into the elementary school or wherever it has to go, I think that the cost of the laptop, but the versatility of that kind of outweighs the iPad, just from the perspective of what I was hearing at the discussion. That was about all.
Okay. All right. Well, I don't think it just isn't a big observer report evening, I guess, tonight. And, you know, I'm looking for public comment, and there are no attendees left on the attendee list. So we've managed to push everybody off.
Shocking.
Who had
And
any.
Dean, thank you for bringing that up tonight. No, really, because I made a phone call after we spoke, you know, to let people know about it, and I hadn't heard back. So I guess they got the message.
Well, I've been keeping an eye on how many people are on the attendee list, and it's been kind of shrinking as we've gotten into the details of, you know, does Dean send a letter and what's the tax rate? You know, everybody's like, okay, I'm out of here. I tried to make it clear with this webinar mode how you participate, and if people are going to drop off, that's up to them. I did the best I could to describe how to be part of it. Anyway, there are no public comments because there are no public in attendance. So I need a motion.
Do you have correspondence, Dean?
Okay. And
Do you have correspondence?
we need to do it by the roll.
No, do we have correspondence?
Do you have correspondence?
I'm sorry, Mary, what's up?
Do we have the correspondence? Chris is asking, do we have any correspondence?
I'm unaware of any correspondence.
You sent us some.
I sent stuff out that I had received the filing from the judge, and I sent that along. But that's about
No,
all.
you had a letter from a Peter Gifford, I think, or there was a letter about the budget adjustment that we made. It was Carrie. I saw it in the materials. You don't remember it? I think his name is Gifford.
Okay, 1 second. We will look.
Was it Dean in the last couple of days? Maybe I sent it out Monday morning.
I'm sorry if I haven't noticed it. That's just
Okay.
it's on me.
We did have a letter, so
I'll read it and get back to the vendor.
okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Again, just one question. We have 2 vacancies. Any news on progress filling the vacancies?
You know, I sent out one little prayer to somebody saying, would you be interested in this? You can either get back to me or you can get back to Carmen Reese, the moderator. I heard nothing back on that, so I didn't go anywhere.
I thought Carmen said she had one person who was likely, so maybe we should follow up with her.
Yeah.
She scheduled me to talk to one person that, I don't know if it's the same person there, Mary, but the person declined with, they do have 2 young kids, and with the current environment thought it would be too much pressure. I don't know if that's the same individual you were referring to.
I don't either.
So yeah, it is, it would be very helpful if we can beat the bushes a little and find candidates ourselves to help, because the moderator has so much on her plate right now, just trying to get us through town meeting, that this is really an exceptional year. And if we can help her out finding candidates, that would be good. So.
Do we lose anybody? Does anybody got their 2-term?
3 people have to roll off every year. There's 15 members, and it's a 3-person a year thing. So 3 people will roll off, and that means 3 need to be replaced. I think she has, even though one person's I think Peter Fischelis has indicated that he would re-up. So he won't roll off, even though his term expires. He can go another term. But that means she has 2 more to fill. So,
yeah.
So there you go. All right. So now I do need a motion to. Okay.
Motion to adjourn.
Okay. So I'm going to run around my little grid here. Ms. Reynolds.
Yes.
Then I'm Dean Banfield, and I vote yes. Ms. Ortner.
Yes.
Mr. Swain.
Yes.
Ms. Hartman.
Yes.
Mr. Jameson.
Yes.
Mr. Rubenstein.
Yes.
Ms. Zoll.
Yes.
Mr. Guariello.
Yes.
Mr. Patel.
Can we, if we don't have a quorum, that means we can't adjourn?
You can abstain if you want. I don't care. We're probably just going to leave meeting, you know. Mr. Hickling.
Yes, please.
Okay. Thank you all. It's been a very successful meeting. Thank you.
Good night. Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you.
Good night, everyone.